Welcome to the Atomic Level, the show where we decode the matters of wealth, one insightful conversation at a time with the rising stars in finance, business, and tech so that you can grow and protect not only your net worth, but also your net happiness. As always, we are live first and on replay second. I'm Chris Snook. Today, I welcome an old friend I ran into just recently, Alon Goren from Draper Goren Blockchain, a venture capital firm in the early stage up in San Francisco. And it's great to see you, Alon. It's nice to have you on.
Yeah, great to be here. Great to see you again. It was fun running into you at the Draper event up north. I'm actually just one quick correction. I'm based in Southern California, but Tim and the whole Draper, most of the Draper Associates crew and stuff like that are based in San Mateo and then in New York. And but
That's
a
right.
lot of my team is also in Michigan too. So, but we're all over the place and we're online. I mean, we're everywhere all the time. So
That's
we could be
right.
in
We
San
were. I
Francisco.
was. I was forth with a 248 number this morning, making sure you had no issues getting on. So the good old 248 was in the house.
Oh, yeah, that was, were you talking to Brenna this morning?
Uh,
She was in Michigan texting me going, "Log into Substack," and I'm like, "I'm there. Let's go."
I'm there. So
Yeah,
we just saw each other. Man, it's already been probably 6 weeks. We saw each other up at
yeah,
the summit that you guys did up at Half Moon Bay, and I hadn't seen you. I don't think since
yeah,
2018. It was like in
maybe.
LA, right? It was.
Yeah, LA Blockchain Summit probably. It's been a while. I think the last one we did was right after COVID, but we started those in we started in 2016, I think. No, even earlier we were doing something called Crowd Invest Summit. Then, you know, crypto became the main focus and my partner and I we had kind of both gone full all in on crypto, so we called it Crypto Invest Summit. And at a certain point we're like, let's just call it LA Blockchain Summit. the but we also hosted something called Security Token Summit back when, the RWA buzzword was
Right.
security token. And we've just been a part of this space since almost the beginning.
Yeah.
Sidelines at the beginning, jumping in at around 2016, 17.
Yeah, and I think that's what was
Yeah.
exciting about, reconnecting just serendipitously a couple, I don't know, whatever that was, I guess in May? I can't remember when that was.
Oh,
May or
wow.
June?
Yeah, that's true. It is a May event because I always remember the timing. It's always around Mother's Day, and I'm always worried,
Yeah,
like,
so
I can't travel during Mother's Day. That's messed up. So we're always trying to figure it out. So yeah, it was in May. It's been that
yeah,
long.
yeah,
Wow.
time flies. So not only does 8 years or 9 years go fast, but 3 months goes fast. But I'm super excited to get you on the Atomic Level. We've been doing these now, on Substack, mostly as a live, first exclusive for the last 57 episodes, and it's really kind of been a nice way to get started. And so I know these will be replaying everywhere on podcasts that are
I'll
like,
make sure if it's not live on my Substack right now because we were trying to figure it out, I'll make sure to post it too because I actually just a few weeks ago, like completely separate from this, restarted using my Substack newsletter also and getting back to all the subscribers from back in the day too. So it's been fun. I've made a few posts there and I'm liking it.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So if you're
pretty great.
if you're new to Alon and you haven't connected to him before, that you'll hear me say it a couple times, but make sure you subscribe to him here. He's got a big following on LinkedIn as well. Does a lot of publishing there, but Substack he is re-engaging. So for the folks that would like to
Mm.
consume his ideas and his musings and his writings there, feel free to start anytime like now doing that. But let's get into who you are a little bit. I love to take people
Sure.
through a journey of just like kind of what shaped your worldview, and your investment view, just so they have context for like kind of your purview. You've been in
Yeah.
this asset class of venture capital as well as blockchain and crypto and all things related to that for about more than a decade. But before that, kind of just talk to us all about, whatever you want growing up, but give us some context
Yeah.
here and
Yeah.
like in your worldview, just so we understand more about that.
Yeah, yeah, if we go to growing up, I grew up, like, in the back of an auto parts shop. My dad, had, an auto parts shop, and if you're from Southern California, at least, like, that's the area I kind of knew. There were these shops that weren't like the traditional auto parts shop, like a Pep Boys or whatever that sold the parts. They did sell the parts, but not all of them. They sold starters, alternators, gearboxes, axles, things like that, but they actually rebuilt them in the back. So like 90 9% of what they sold was like you would bring in your starter alternator for your car, let's say, or one of the garages in town would bring it in. And then a guy in the back would actually rebuild that exact one, like put in new bushings and bearings and solenoids and all the, parts and rewire them and do the thing. And then sell it back to you. Or if they had one on the shelf, they would just trade it and sell you the one on the shelf if you wanted that. And the the reason I even bring that up is that because we live in this world now where it's really hard to quantify what the heck we do. Like you sit in front of the computer all day and you're like, what did I accomplish? But when you grow up kind of going, uh uh yeah, share the stream wherever you are. Hit the like button, subscribe, make sure you subscribe to the Atomic Podcast, man. Live streams. So yeah, it's this thing that I talk to people about all the time, more and more lately, and I feel like I it's funny because you bring up things like, "Oh, yeah, I grew up like this," and then sometimes it feels like you're trying to explain to someone "I didn't have all this stuff when I grew up," or "I didn't this," or you're turning into that old man, uphill both ways in the snow to school or whatever,
Right.
but it's not even that reason, it's the same reason why I always argue with people, and sometimes people get, like, kinda precious about it and mad at me, like I'm degrading what they did, but it's not about degrading what they did. It's pointing at something that I think is crazy important that people look down on, which is like wood shop and metal shop and art and stuff like that. I think people go, yeah, art is really important, music's really important. It's like math, brain, creativity. But I think I was shocked and pissed a few years ago when I found out that none of the local schools had wood shop anymore. And I told somebody this once and I remember them getting offended, which was I was like, I learned more in wood shop and metal shop in high school and junior high too, than I did going to school for business. And people are like, what? No, using a table saw is not more important than, whatever. I go, it's not about using the table. It's partly about that because people just don't know how to do shit anymore. But it's about taking a raw piece of wood, planing it down, writing blueprints, doing whatever, and then finishing and accomplishing something from nothing, right? That's what we do in startups all day long. We have an idea, we go, how do I make it happen? And you do it. And so, anyway,
I
total
actually,
tangent.
it's something I didn't know about you, and it's actually great context for the kind of narrative I want to pursue with you today because it's this world of bits and atoms that I talk a lot about. I know you talk a lot about it, and then you look at this last kind of 3 decades, and what we prioritized, and you've kind of been in the heart of it, obviously, as a venture capitalist. So it's not a binary conversation whether one's better than the other, but it is about, this human experience that we all live in and this ecology of information that we now all live in, right? Because it used to be
Yeah,
we lived with access to information or data or what have you. Now we kind of live within it and it lives within us. And we're carrying around these, exhaust
yeah,
mechanisms that throw off,
yeah,
gazillions and gazillions and gazillions of of terabytes and exabytes of data that is now being refined. And yet, a piece of wood's a piece of wood and it could be manipulated, or a piece of metal is something that can be manipulated. And there's a very real and tangible experience that a human has with that that works on a different part of our brain.
yeah,
Now we're starting to hear about, oh, we need more electricians. We need more of that. So
yeah.
now it's becoming cool to be blue collar right now. I want to go buy a bunch of electrician shops. Like everything on YouTube follows a trend of like, oh, now let's go blue collar and trade schools. And like, that's the future. The reality is, it's always been here. The built environment is part of what we need as human beings because we live in shelter. We eat real things. We consume
Yeah.
products.
Yeah, it's also it's like, I'm not saying when I say that, "Hey, we should all become carpenters." I mean, that would be cool. And I think that, you get, again, there's, some reptilian part of our brain that gets some kind of satisfaction when you work with your hands and you do things like that, like gardening or, anything, right? Art, music. Anything you do, you get that human satisfaction, but I think just in terms of, learning and growth, it's hard to show my kids, right? like, I don't come home from work covered in grease like I used to as a teenager. Watch my dad have to come and take off his shoes in the garage and wash his hands in the certain sink with the certain stuff
Right.
because, like, he's covered in the dirt. Even when he wasn't doing the work, like, everything was dirty, right? Like,
Right.
so I would see that as a kid, and it's like, "Oh, my dad worked hard." My kids, see me do things like this. They hear me talk on phones and whatever, but, like, it doesn't look that different from when they're playing video games or I'm playing video games, right? And sometimes, especially when we were in the crypto land world, it looked like I was playing video games all day. And
Right.
so, so I think there's that, but even more so just teaching them, like, you can do things. Like, people it like, there what's the like, people say, like, "You can do things," I guess is but just to let people know there is a certain thing in your brain that once you do it enough times, you just know, like, like, thousands of people go like, "I had this idea," or "This person's stealing my idea," or this thing or that thing. And in, like, the venture capital world and the startup world, a lot of people are like, ideas aren't worth that much. And people get offended when you say that to them sometimes, or you feel bad, like, when you think, "Hey, you have a great idea," and people are like, "So what?" Because it's about execution and actually doing it, because there's a much smaller subset of people, like, everyone has ideas, lots of ideas, but then there's a smaller subset of people who get an idea and go, "I'm gonna build this, like, I'm going to make it happen." And so I think that kind of education, helps. So,
I think
you know
that's the other thing too, is it's kinda like, I love the analogy of kinda your background context of you grew up as a kid watching people come in with essentially used parts,
Yeah,
and the option would be, I go buy a replacement, I go buy but I
yeah,
need someone to install it, or can you salvage this? In other words, can
yeah,
you rebuild this thing that I came in with that used to work that no longer works right? Whether it
yeah,
was a starter or an alternator, and
yeah,
somehow in there, it impressed upon your mind, there's this discernment. There's this, like, what is trash? What do I keep? What do I change? And in the world of venture capital, like you said, you're equivalent of putting common on your hands in the sink in the
yeah,
garage and, like,
uh,
wiping off all the grease. Your kids and my kids don't get to see the brain
yeah.
doing that, right? The washing and the rinsing and the reading voraciously and the
And
listening and
and
the
we don't and yeah, and we don't do it properly sometimes too. Like, now that you say that, I'm going, "You know what? Like, I need to, when I'm done working, like, I need to consciously be done, and I
yeah,
need to wash my brain with some Comet or whatever,
right,
because we're just working all the time. We got this in our pocket." And then you realize, like, you know, uh, uh my wife will be like, "Where'd you go?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I just came back to my computer to check on this thing,"
yeah.
and
Or I'll
or you
be
pull out your
eating,
phone.
I'll be eating, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I'll look like a deer in headlights, and she's like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, "Oh, I was thinking about, uh,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought I was eating, and then I went into the repository that I forgot to, update," or, like, whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? Or the email list that I have in front of me. So it is a great analogy to think about what is the mental equivalent of Comet washing your hands at the end of the day for people who do knowledge work. And now, again, not how that I planned on getting into this, but it's good background to worldview is how do you do that? What are some of your best practices for that? Or what do you think what are habits you should pick back up? And then the other thing is, how does how do you start your day? Because you see
Mm.
so much deal flow, having, a relationship with Tim and cultivating that. I'm interested how you guys met years ago. But, like, the amount of deal flow and the amount of talent that you guys see and you say no to,
Yeah.
right? More than most people as investors would ever get the chance to even look at, to consider. And, and even then, you kinda know your arithmetic is that you bet on 100 things, 2 are gonna do the power law and
Yeah.
make fund where it returns. So you bet on 100 that you believe are gonna run through brick walls and have a good idea, but have the ability to execute, knowing that 98 of them are not gonna really amount to much.
Yeah.
And it's very
Hopefully,
personal.
the ratio isn't that extreme, because I think I'm at, like, 60 investments, myself, in terms of not my personal money,
Right.
obviously, on most of them, but, like, managing that many. But, yeah, that's basically it, right?
You
You
believe in
make
them
a
all.
lot
In
of
other
bets.
words, what
Yeah.
I'm saying is you believe in them all, right? And I
Yeah.
know you well enough to know, like, you don't, like, bet on these things, like, it's very personal, right? Like, you
At
get
our stage, it's extremely personal, yeah, like, because
'cause it's
we're
early.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're the earliest, like, with DGB, we try to be, a lot of times, the first check into a company, and so it's more, in that sense, it's more like an accelerator program without an accelerator program because we believe in being more flexible. It fits our style better anyway. But like, it's not about writing a huge check. It's about spending the time with the companies and getting in the door with them and helping them get established so they could raise more money if that's what makes sense for their company and grow. And so it's all about the people at that stage, right? So basically, you have to fall in love with these people. You have to like really want to hang out with them. And there's like a few ways we look at the deals, right? We have to say no a lot because just because we like somebody, we can't just say yes. Just because we like an idea, we can't say yes. And there's a lot of times where we like love the people and like, oh my God, these people are brilliant. But then we have to have this internal conversation and go, okay, how do we add value? Like we can only spend, like, we're constrained by time. We've grown, but it's still there still is certain constraints. I can only spend a certain amount of time. My partner David Blesnak could only spend a certain amount of time. Then we have a team that can spend more time. But like, we have to be careful in how we grow. And so we'll sometimes go like, this person's building something in the, I don't know, medical device space. I'm just making something up, but like, but they're brilliant. We love them. But like, I don't know how I'm going to add value other than, being a cheerleader and maybe helping a little
Right.
bit. Like with somebody building in the fintech space, I absolutely know how I'm going to help every company. Like, the first day I meet them, and that helps us shape it. But if we meet somebody with a brilliant idea, but I go, how am I going to hang out with this person for the next 8 years? Because it's a long game and we're the earliest, like early stage
Right.
startup. People look at like Facebook and they think, oh my gosh, it happened overnight, but it didn't. It took like, I don't know how many years, over 10 for them to go public.
Right.
Um, uh,
Well, that
but
company's over
yeah,
22 years old now, like, most of
yeah,
it's hard to believe, like, that company's over 22 years old and,
yeah.
and yeah, and
But
there
yeah,
was
so as the early investor, and especially as the person who asks for more, because when we write that first check, we ask for more than the average, VC because we're not passive, right? We're spending. I spend time talk about back in the day. We have companies that were started in 2018 when you and I, probably even after you and I or before you and I met, and I'm on the board of those companies. I still communicate with the founders every week. And in certain waves, when they're raising money or things are happening, I'll be with them, every day sometimes. And I go, if I didn't like that guy, this would be a miserable job, right?
right. Well,
So
and I'm sure that you learned that the hard way. I mean, so part of the framework, it sounds like, in the operating system is,
yeah,
are you more of a jockey versus the horse kind of investor? A lot of early
yeah,
stage VCs, could say they're one or the other, right? I'm betting on the horse, the idea, because I have access to jockeys that can ride, and I just need to
yeah,
find something that's novel and get our wedge into whatever the asset class or the trend is. Others are more, I want to find the right jockey with a horse that can run the
yeah.
race, but the jockey is more important as far as the decision. Which one do you lean towards? Is it 50-50? Is it one or the other?
It's for sure the jockey because I think that they they have to be, they have to have some North Star. They have to be solving a problem. They have to have an idea or whatever. But I will say that some of our best wins have been with entrepreneurs um, who have failed, right? Like, because we become so close with these people and we work so closely with them that when they do fail, when things are happening, one, we know before anyone else because we're working early. That's part of our sort of information advantage. On the flip side, when things are going better, when things are going great, we know before everyone else too. So that helps us and our partners make investment decisions also. But when it's not working out, we know, we try to help them, we try our best. And sometimes companies fail, especially early stage startups, especially after many years. And when they fail, Tim Draper impressed this upon us early when I first I joined a fund in the Draper network early. And I remember being at an investor event that he hosted just for the investors in all of the funds that he's a part of. And one of the things he told all of his investors and outside investors was when a company fails, don't be the investor that chases after them and tries to get the pennies on the dollar. He's like, the lawyers will do what the lawyers will do. You might get a penny, you might not get a penny, but our job is to not get, back our 10 cents on the dollar. Our job is to hit it out of the park, right? And so he said, be the first investor to reply to them because they're might be in the worst headspace of their life. They feel bad for sure. They just told you that they failed. Be the first investor to congratulate them on being one of the few people who actually tried, right? And congratulate them for doing it and be nice to them and, let them know that you got their back if they need help with anything. And he's like, and then you'll be the first person they call when they start their next company. And that's our job, right? And we're super loyal, super tight with all of our people. So, we have one founder whose company kind of failed. He swung for the fences. He did really well in a lot of ways, but it was too early or whatever reason the company failed. They're the first people we think about when we have another idea or when they come to us with another idea or there's something we want to do and we go, oh my gosh, this guy would be perfect. He's not just an engineer, but he can execute, he can sell. We got to talk to him about this because if he's interested in this, let's go. And that's kind of the whole thing, right? You have a team, you have a network. And by the way, there are situations where you hung with this person for 2 years and you go, they'd be great to do XYZ, but they're not a good founder or they're not a nice person. You just don't want to work with them. So you have insight that nobody else has on these people. And look, were we as humans, are most people extremely successful in the first thing they do or the second thing they do? We get better and better over time, right? And
again,
hopefully,
I love that you brought up that nuance and
yeah,
that lesson from Tim too, because it really makes sense for anybody who's kind of watched that ecosystem of funds over the years from afar or even maybe involved in it. It's a very interesting thing, right? Each asset class has its thing. There's some where basis points are all that matter. And so you're
yeah,
really managing to basis point improvements, and that makes or breaks your ability to stay in the game. Then there's some where all it is about grand slams, and
mm,
that's venture, right? And so if all it is about the grand slams, and you recognize that home run hitters are built a certain way, and they're probably not always going to be an all around hitter,
mm,
like, they're gonna strike out as many
yeah.
times, if not more,
Well,
than maybe
that's yeah. Isn't like something like batting 500 really really good? That's
well,
50-50.
batting 500 is impossible. No one the
See,
of all
well, especially nowadays, like the
yeah,
pitchers
well,
are
the greatest
insane.
hitter of all time only batted 400, one
Okay,
season.
there you go.
So
Shows how close I play. Watch.
no,
I
so
love
you
watching baseball. I just don't know the
yeah,
inner
so
workings.
Hall of Fame is you
Yeah,
average 300 over a year, which means 3 out of 7 times you win
yeah,
and 7 out of 10 times you fail. That's a Hall of Famer in baseball if you average that over
yeah,
your career, right? And so most people have heard that analogy, but in startups, it might even be less than 300. The question is,
yeah,
when people hit the home run at the end of the game or walk off and your team wins, all people remember is that they did it under the clutch pressure in
yeah,
that environment, and they kind of deal with the strikeouts the rest of the way. But again, the hitter still has an emotional ride, and I say that because you touched on it. The genius of that is that your deal flow comes to you not just up front, it comes to you on the recurring side when you're a venture investor. The person you meet now that you say yes or no to, their best idea and the timing and the market and the customer and the problem and the solution and all the other infrastructure that has to get in place for their thing to even work. That might be 20 years from now. And
yeah,
so your first idea may be okay, but it may not be a home run. It may be a single.
yeah,
And so in venture world, that doesn't really pay the bills either.
yeah,
But that relationship is one where you need a multi-decade approach,
yeah,
and you have to start and that is the reason why some of these well-known funds that have kind of been there consistently since the 70s and
yeah,
80s and 90s, why they get all the best deals is because they've cultivated the best ecosystem of founders as well.
yeah,
And also made it like more than just a term sheet.
Yeah. Well,
And
they have a brand, they have like a legacy, but also they have that that network that only comes from working
yeah,
for that
and
long and showing up.
yeah, you have to care too. I mean, like I thought what's fun is when I was at the event, like I hung out longer. I came up for a meeting and then I had a meeting that ended, I think at 8 or 8:30. And then I was like, well, I'm going to stay here the whole, before I have to get back. So I stayed and I kind of sat in some of the rooms and it's like funny because I'm sitting there and I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing guys, including Tim, and he's in the front row. And I'm like, he doesn't have to be sitting in front row. I mean, technically, yes,
Yeah.
if your name's on the event and if it's, and
Yeah.
you're on the event, you kind of have to be there, but that doesn't mean you do it. That just
Yeah.
means, but because there's this like part of it that is truly passionate and curious, right? And I remember in
Totally.
2021, it was COVID summer, so I guess it was actually September of 2020. Um, the longest I ever spent with him was 8 hours in Wyoming. Actually, it was longer than that. We did an 8-hour panel with,
A single panel for 8 hours?
it was literally an 8-hour panel. It was like multiple topics, but it was
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
Ultimate thing in Laramie, Wyoming. And we had, Ed Seidel, who was the acting president at the time, new president. We had Connor Prochaska, who's currently at ARPA E as the Senate confirmed director of ARPA E. But Dario Gill was at the time at IBM. Tim was there representing the fund and his funds, and we had the governor. And it was like this conversation around AI and quantum and blockchain. This was 2020 September.
Yeah.
We're all wearing masks. Tim was the first one to pull it down, thankfully.
Of
And I
course.
think part of the reason we got him there was because no one had traveled in 6 months, and so going to Laramie, Wyoming sounded like going to the Bahamas, right? It was just
Yeah.
like, why not, right? Like, get me out of the house. But my point is that I remember very specifically later that night hosting a dinner in this little bar in Laramie, Wyoming, and there might have been 80 people in there because I think that's all we were allowed to have.
Yeah.
And we're all having a dinner and like kind of networking, and he was sitting down and he's just listening to pitches. And he ended up, I think, writing a check into one of the deals like right after that he met there. And it's just like this engagement level that a venture investor and a founder and that kind of asset class has, where it's like you're truly in the mix. Like your
Yeah.
background in the machine shop doesn't shock me, but it's uniquely interesting.
Yeah,
How
it's I mean,
go from that though to fintech? That's what I'm like. What was the bridge
well,
between like
it's
metal shop that did
well,
to technology and business?
I'm I'm uh I'm a goofball, but I would go to the back of my dad's shop. The second I learned how to like weld and do things, it was funny because in his shop there wasn't a lot of welding, but there was like one of the guys used a welder for some of the things he did. So the second I found out that that thing existed, I was like, I started just taking pieces of metal, making like art out of it, and messing around. And one summer, again, you kind of there's like two sides to it. There's like the hustle side of it. Like when I would ask my dad, like, "Hey, I want to buy a bike or I need more money," I swear until probably like 10 years ago, I was pissed at my dad for this. Like I thought he was an asshole for doing this, to be honest. But then as I had kids and they got older, I'm like, some of the and it started working and stuff. The best whoops. See how good I was? I was so good about keeping my do not disturb on and not going into other windows and checking things that my screensaver came on. It's like the longest I sat in front of my computer without touching it for a long time.
You can
Um,
see on these all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, so uh, where I was gonna go with that is
Yeah, so you were mad at your
yeah,
dad. You were mad at your
I was mad
dad,
at my dad
and
because I would be like, I want money for a bike, and he'd be like, in a heavy Israeli accent. He's like an immigrant. He'd be like, come in on the Sunday. You make cash. You put it in your pocket. Like he'd like make like the thing. You get buy a bike. And I'd be like, Sunday, who calls on Sunday? He's like, I don't know. I don't go there on Sunday. The phone might ring, and I'm like, what? And he's like, take the flyers, take the things, go to the garages, just walk door to door, and if you see a starter on the floor, an axle on the floor, point at it and say, who's doing this? I'll do it for better, and like he just taught me to hustle basically. Like, you want money? Go get it, And I remember being so annoyed. It was kind of like if I wanted more food at like a restaurant or like at a fast food place, I would go to McDonald's and I'm still hungry. He'd be like, go order it. And you're like a little kid and you're embarrassed or whatever. And be like, I guess you're not hungry, And I'd be like, you learn the
right.
lesson. But he would do that with everything. And it pissed me off. But so I learned that hustle and then I got lucky. that my older brother, who's 4 years older than me, so I got two older brothers. One's 4 years older than me, one's 8 years older than me. So I'm the youngest one. So the flip side of the luck was that I didn't have a younger brother to turn 16 and take over my spot and making deliveries at the shop. So I had to stay there longer, until I kind of basically fought with my dad and went like, I'm going to get a job outside of the family business, which is what he wanted. But at the same time, you know, if I didn't do it, you have to pay somebody to do it. And
Right.
so, there's the push and pull. But my older brother, that's 4 years older than me, was a computer nerd. I kind of was too with some of my friends growing up, but he actually was like building stuff. Like he became an engineer,
Mm.
was like learning Visual Basic and the programming languages. And so I'd look over his shoulder, learn a little bit. Um, and remember, this is like AOL days. We're talking old school. Then he went to school for computer science and he was working a job as a engineer at like a software development company, and they were begging him to quit school to work more hours. And I was like, well, school's not important for computer science, especially back then. So I guess I'll go to school for business because I'm already a computer. I already know how to do this stuff. I wish that I was better as a developer and as an engineer now, like because I'm somewhat technical, but not nearly as I can't build stuff from scratch the way I would want to. Um, but I went to school for business, so that was helpful. And when I was going to school, I had to work. So um, just kind of coincidentally, one of the jobs I was able to get while going to school was as a bank teller. And so I got to see what was like totally screwed up and wrong with the bank. And then local to me, um,
Did you have
yeah,
like a
yeah.
when you say that, it sounds like you always had that, but I'm assuming you didn't. Like, what was the awareness that made you feel like something screwed up and wrong with the bank? Like, was it just you were working there as a teller and you just saw things and
I,
went, wow, I didn't know that's how it actually works. And now that I do, I don't think that's really kind of cool. Or
a
was there
little,
some other
yeah.
exposed context that made you kind of question it?
I always, I don't think it was even conscious yet, and I'll tell you like maybe where it flipped a little, but it was just crazy to me. Like one, I just remember like having to make deposits at the shop and like do collections, like running around and there was a few sides to it. One, I was like terrified, like, sometimes we would need cash and I was terrified to drive, from the bank to the shop with like $1,000 cash. Like, that was crazy, like who carries this kind of cash? Or like the other way around, if somebody paid with cash, then I'd take it to the bank. But there was all these like weird things, like we were still, collecting checks and paying things with checks and balancing stuff that I remember just learning at a somewhat young age. But my dad had a partner that was great about dealing with that stuff, but then he moved, and so my dad was doing it. My dad was terrible at it, so he'd give it to like me, which I was maybe better, but I was still like a 16-year-old who was a goofball with ADD and not knowing what ADD even was. Just I didn't know how to do that crap. So it was just learning all that stuff at a young age probably helped. But being a teller and actually being at the bank and realizing like, their systems were like, and being a techie, were so antiquated. They had these things on the computers to keep, the tellers and the people that worked at the bank from like going on the internet and playing games and installing software and doing stuff like that. But it was even me as like I guess I was probably 19, 20 years old at the time, figured out as a techie, if they couldn't let me install software and go on the basic, again, early days of the internet, from there, what I would do is I actually found a way to log into my computer at home from my job. And so while I was depositing checks for people and doing the stuff on one side, when there was a lull or in between, I'd be logged into my computer in a window, like making flyers for punk rock shows using Photoshop or something on my computer at home from my work, totally breaking all of their rules because like you're not supposed to be able to do stuff like that. And there probably, if I was like malicious, I could have probably done some bad security things, but like I just wanted to make art or goof around, right? Like, so I was doing that. And I remember just seeing things also like that offended me, right? Like the way migrant workers or just workers in general would come in on the Friday with their paychecks and I'm looking at the bank account of these businesses that are like I remember going, why aren't they doing direct like wire transfers and things like that? Oh, because the wire transfer costs like $20 or $50. And I go like, why? It's actually easier and better for the bank. They don't have to pay me to be sitting here to deposit a check and do this thing. Why are they doing it this way? Or why do they charge these people that? One, because they can, and two, because the company, right, who is paying all these thousands of employees, right, would hold the money in an account. It had to be a
Right.
separate account. It couldn't be like their operations account. They can't be floating stuff like legally, but they hold it in an account where if the money was transferred instantly, because some of these big employers had millions and millions and millions of dollars in their payroll account, until the check clears, they're earning interest on that money, right?
Right.
And 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 so the way they got around, the way they were able to continue to earn interest on that money is making sure that the banks charge their employees a lot of money to deposit the checks until we got to the point where it was like just completely unacceptable to not allow people to just get their money wired into the bank. So I remember sitting there even as a 20-year-old techie going like, this makes no sense. Oh, they're kind of messing with the workers so that the company can make more money, which the company's job is to make money. I'm not like against that, but not at the expense of like the dude just wants to get home at the end of a Friday. He's been working his ass off all week and now he has to sit in line at this bank with me and two other young tellers and a line with 20 dudes out the door, to cash their checks or whatever. I just
And
remember
I don't know
feeling
what
bad about
year
that.
that was. I don't know what year that was, but I would
It was
imagine
probably
that
2002, 3, something like that. Like, it was
yeah,
still
so it's
there it was Yeah.
you probably had more authority at that point as a teller than you did 5, 6 years later, right?
Yeah,
So in other words, even then you're realizing there's certain things you could probably do without permission just because you felt like it, whether it was clear the thing or cash a check or whatever. Whereas when you go out to like '08, '09, '10 and ever since, you're basically just a glorified interface that
yeah,
really has no authority as a teller today, right? Like
yeah,
so here's a funny story. You'll love this one, Alon, because imagine I came into your bank with this. So it's
yeah,
like 2007. I'm not in technology yet full time.
yeah,
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in a different space altogether.
yeah.
And I had a business downtown San Diego. So I had an account at Wells Fargo. So I walk in, I can't
Oh,
remember
Wells
what day of
Fargo
the
is
week.
one of the worst.
Yeah. Get tired of Wells Fargo. So I've read the Creature from Jekyll Island like 3 times at this point. It's I want to say it's February '07-ish, somewhere in there. I don't
Yeah,
remember. So we hadn't had Bear Stearns. We hadn't had any of that yet, but we're like,
yeah,
it's coming, but whatever. So I'm like
yeah,
done with Wells Fargo. So you remember why? And I'm gonna go to a smaller business bank in downtown San Diego. So I need to go get all my money out. And I don't have any checks. So I walk in, as much as I thought I knew about the banks, I walk in and I request to to drain my accounts. And I think I had like $35,000 in change
yeah,
between the operating account and whatever the sweep account was, which at the time for me was like all the
yeah.
money in the world sitting in an account, right? So I go in and I don't schedule, I don't call. I go in and I basically say, I'd like to have my money. And they're like, well, how much do you want? I'm like, all of it, like 35,000. Yeah, you know where this goes. So the teller
Yeah,
looks at me and she's like, "Well, did you order it?" And I'm like, "What do you mean did I order it? I'm
yeah,
I'm ordering it now. Like
yeah.
I'm asking
I
for
went
my
into the
money.
bank and I'm asking for my money. Yeah,
I want my money. Give me my money." She's like, "Well, I can't give that to you." And I'm like, "What do you mean you can't give it to me? Like, just give me my money. I want
yeah,
to withdraw it. I've got to move it over to a different account and, you know, um, can you give me a cashier's check?" And she's like, I can't, I forget why I wanted cash. I think I just wanted cash because I wanted to be done. I didn't want any holds on the other side or whatever it was. And so I
you
asked
want
for
cash,
cash.
like, once you discover that they don't have it, it makes you want it more, and then you're, like,
Yeah,
poking a little bit because I know a
yeah. So
cashier's check technically is covered, but, like, you're just like, "I don't you don't have my
oh,
money?"
you
Like,
remember it was before the banking crisis had started because
yeah,
there was no way this would have happened if they
yeah,
didn't. And your $1,000 driving from
yeah,
the machine
yeah,
shop to the bank and being worried, that's what made me think of this story
yeah,
laughing. So short version of a longer story is somehow I convinced them that they're gonna do this. She goes to the back, she talks to whoever she talks to. I didn't even think they had it on hand, right? So now I'm
yeah,
starting to question, I'm like, I only am asking for 35,000. This is Wells Fargo. You mean to tell me you don't
Yeah,
have 35 grand in here without messing up everybody else who needs
yeah,
money today? Like, what the hell? Where's the money?
yeah,
Right? And so I remember thinking that as I'm waiting there.
yeah,
But I'm dressed in like a suit and I'm kind of,
yeah,
whatever, doing my best salesmanship on this teller. And they come back and they're like, "Oh, the only challenge is we don't have enough big bills to give it to you." I said, "I don't care how you give it to me. You can give it to me in fives. I just want it and I want to leave with it now."
yeah.
No joke.
You
There
get
was a
like a cardboard box with
no,
like
there was
the
a brick shrink wrapped, like, it was like a
oh
cube
shit. Yeah.
of $5 bills from the Federal Reserve that was like,
Were they all brand new?
it was still in the
Like,
shrink wrap, in the vault, that
oh,
she brings out like 20 grand of it in fives in a shrink wrap
ah,
thing, and you couldn't even see through it. I
and now
literally
you're going to your new bank and they're like, "This dude is shady as hell."
Totally. Hey, listen, so and that's the best part. So I'm literally parked at the Ralph's. If you've ever been to downtown San Diego, on Front Street, there's a Ralph's, and across the corner there was a Wells Fargo. So the Wells Fargo was like literally you had to cross Front Street to go to the Ralph's and go underground to get into the parking garage. Well, that's where I'm parked. So I have a suit jacket. So I have it. I don't have a bag. I don't have anything. She gives me 15 grand of it in like bigger bills. So I put like 10 grand
Into the
here,
suit,
5 grand
yeah.
here, and I have 20 grand worth of $5 bills in this brick that's still shrink wrapped, like,
So
thick.
you can see through it too. It's not like you're just carrying a box, you
Yeah,
know?
but it's like it's not, like, transparent because it's, like,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
shrink wrapped. It literally was right off the Federal Reserve
Yeah,
box. Like, so it's I put it underneath my jacket, like, I got this big, like,
yeah,
cube sticking out, and now I'm walking across the street with 35 grand in cash, shrink wrapped, and in my thing, trying not to get seen as I go to the Rouse,
yeah,
and then I had to drive, like, 5 blocks to go to the other bank and bring it in.
yeah,
When I got the other bank, they looked at me, they took it, but because they knew it was from they're
yeah.
like, "Well, you didn't just get this, like, somewhere else," but I
You have
had
to
to
sit there for an hour for them to put it through those machines going
yeah, oh, it was the funniest thing ever, dude. I was like, but that was when I realized that it's not my money,
Yeah,
because I realized back then that was before I was in technology, it was before anything. I realized that it took me like 30 minutes to get 35 grand out of a bank that I thought was mine
yeah,
anytime I wanted it.
yeah.
And, and
I remember one time at a principal, similar not the same, but, like, uh, I went to, a Wells Fargo, actually,
yeah,
and I wanted to
I'm not picking on
wire
you, Wells, it
money.
just happens to
Yeah,
be, right.
we had 2 bank accounts, for our business, and, my partner and I went into the Wells Fargo and wanted to wire money from one bank account to the other. We are like our conference was coming up, and we need to, like, pay some bills or something, and somebody, like, whatever it was, like, it was, I think, something like $10,000 or whatever it was, and they were like, "Oh, um" the manager, he's really busy right now. And I'm like, we just want to wire 10 grand from this to that. And we want it as instant as possible because we got to pay these bills and whatever. And they're like, well, you do this wire, but we have to wait for our manager. And like, we sat there, I filled out the wire forms and we're like sitting there, sitting there, sitting there. And then finally the person comes after like 20 minutes because they're helping somebody else. And then like they look at the account, they do the thing, they're like, okay. Blah, blah, blah. And then the person goes to start doing the wire and they're like, just so you know, it's a $50 wire transfer charge. And out of principle, we're like, we're wiring it across the street. You just made us wait like half an hour. You're going to charge us $50 like to whatever. And they're like, sorry, we can't get around it. We're like, we have money in the account and this and that. They're like, yeah, but because it was a conference, like we'd get a bunch of money from sponsors, then we'd spend it all. And the conference made like little to no money, right? And so we didn't hold a high balance in that account like for
Sure,
a long time. And they're like, well, your average balance isn't big enough for us to like waive the fee. And we're like, we want it's literally the bank across the street. The other bank was across the street, and they're like, "Sorry, we can't do it that way." And we're like, "Well, how much does a?" At this point, we are like pissed off, so we're like, we were got like I was looking at my partner like, "Let's just pay the $50. Like, I'm done with this. We're gonna go out to lunch and get on with our day." And but then like the person was so aggressive with us that we were like, "Okay, fine. How much is the cashier's check to go across the street?" And they're like, "Oh, that also has like a $30, $40 fee." And we're like, and you can't waive that either, huh? And they're like, no. And they're like, can we just take the $10,000 in cash out? And they're like, from a business account? We would need, your partners. Like, you're not supposed to be able to. I'm like, we're both here. We'll sign whatever you need, 10 grand. They're like, oh, you know what? I think we can waive the fee. And like, they started doing this thing. We're like, no, we want the cash. And at that point, we were just being buttheads. Like, we were being dicks because they're driving us nuts. And I ended up getting,
did
10
you have to
grand.
fill out
Like,
a SAR report, though? Did
what
you
was
have to
that?
fill out a SAR Was it
We
before
we
they lowered
probably
the limit?
did. No, we did. It was more recent, like, we, not that recent, but maybe 2017, 18 at some point. Yeah, we filled out a whole report and a thing. It was a big pain in
Yeah,
the butt.
what are you gonna use it for? Well, yeah,
We're gonna
I'm
deposit
gonna
across the street. And then we went across the street and we just deposited. It took 2 seconds, of course. But, like, it was just on principle, like, these banks are so because we're techies. We know that wiring money should take no longer than sending an email, right? Like, there should be maybe the thing that should take the longest is some verifications to confirm my identity or something so that, it's not fraud. But other than that, it should take no time at all. And so it's just crazy.
So
So
this was
I
all
think,
part of the
yeah,
journey into blockchain and crypto,
yeah,
it sounds like, because this now gets you kind of that underlying reason of this needs to be better, this needs to be fairer. Like you kind of had elements of that, right? Which
yeah.
makes sense.
Well,
The
and I will
next
say that it
thing
it
to
took a big leap in the next job. So just because what I was going to, how it I'll fast forward pretty quick until how it got to crowdfunding and crypto and stuff, which was the next job I had. One of the biggest employers in our area, back then in where I live, Ventura County out here, and close to where I went to school because I went to Cal State Channel Islands in the middle of farmland out here because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
closest to the beach. Um, but one of the biggest employers was this little bank called Countrywide. And I
Oh,
somehow got a job there, not because I was like, I just was applying for any job locally that I could do that would hire me like a lot of hours, but not full time. So I already had a job as a teller and stuff like that, but I wanted a different one. And I somehow got super lucky because I applied for the lowest position you could at Countrywide, which was like an assistant kind of job. And my boss who hired me was like the head. I just got so lucky. Like it didn't make any sense that like, I didn't apply for this job. I thought I was going to get maybe some like low level, you know, what's it called? Like data input, just sitting in a cubicle doing what people do in cubicles at banks. Like, I don't know. And I, on my resume, had all these nerdy computer programs that I knew how to play with, like Photoshop and Flash and Visual Basic and some computer programming things. And I was just applying for a low level job. But the dude who was in charge of the systems architecture group at Countrywide,
my
um, is a computer nerd guy in charge of buying all the computers for Countrywide, doing all this stuff, got promoted, and he found out earlier that day that he was allowed to hire an assistant now. And he was going through the list, looking at all the, resumes of the, tons of people in our area that probably applied. And he was going to hire somebody. And then he hit my resume and was like confused why somebody who knows how to use all these computer programming languages and stuff like that was like looking to get this job. And he called me in for an interview. He was a cool dude and we became buddies and he hired me to be there. And so for a year or so, I was in the computer nerd group at Countrywide. Like I got to go in the server
wow.
rooms and do this, but also I got to join my boss sometimes to these lunch meetings where people from Microsoft, people from IBM, they were still using for emails and communications Lotus notes, not even Outlook or email. It was like old school to the max. Again, banks, right? Um, Nothing fit together and it just made no sense. But I got to join him on those meetings with the reps from those companies, just kissing his butt and buying a $5,000 lunch for the 10-person group, like to try and convince him. Because if he just said yes, he'd go buy 50,000 computers from IBM or whatever,
Right.
and buying the license for Windows Vista for 100,000 employees or whatever. So it was a big deal. So I got to watch that, which was crazy. But even as a person of that age, I could see the writing on the walls. What is going on? They tried to convince me. I had a girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, right? We're going to college. We meet each other. We're working there. They tried to convince me at the time. I was making, actually, I don't even know what I was making, but maybe $10 an hour, maybe 12. I don't know. Not full time, right? Because I'm working. I'm maybe 30 hours a week, right? They tried to convince me this is pre-financial crisis, so everything was inflated for like this moment. They had an employee whose job it was to sell mortgages to other employees.
Hmm.
He'd just walk around the cubicles and talk to people and be like, so he came up to me, he's like, so, what do you do? This. And I'm like, oh yeah, my wife and I would live like in an apartment. I don't know. And he's like, why don't you buy a place? And he's trying to convince me that we could afford like a 400 and something $1,000 place. That as a 20-year-old, I'm going, the math doesn't work. He's like, no, no, no. I could hook you up with this interest only thing. And your wife, your girlfriend works too, right? She'll pitch into the rent and whatever. And then, even if you guys don't stay together, if you do stay together, you'll have this great equity. And if you don't stay together, dude, you're gonna own a condo. And I'm like, I can't even afford, like, I won't be able to eat. Like it doesn't make sense. And they were trying to sell this, and I could just see that. And I left there to work at MySpace. And
Oh,
I got a job at MySpace, and that just blew my mind. And I actually stopped going to school full time because MySpace, it was at the height of its everything. And and the combination of seeing the financial crisis, seeing what was going on, and then social media, I just started realizing like, oh my gosh, even less than the financial crisis stuff. Um, I was seeing these bands and artists and people getting to kind of choose their own adventure all of a sudden on the internet for the first time ever. And I was going, how come a small business like my dad's couldn't raise money on the internet from their customers and use
mm,
this social media for good? Or bands couldn't go online and be like, hey, fans, give us $5 a piece and we'll go into the studio and make an album and forget the record labels and do things like that. It just didn't exist yet. There wasn't even, other than PayPal, there wasn't even a way to raise money on the internet. And PayPal was really clunky and shitty. Like, it was just early days. And so that combination of things is what got me into crowdfunding and trying to figure out how the average person could actually get products that banks and institutions give to really wealthy people or people who are established that everyone
I think
else
this
couldn't
is
get.
such a I think this is
Yeah.
such a great example of sometimes you have no idea, especially when we're younger. You just have
Yeah.
no idea, because everybody when I was growing up, there was a big pressure, and maybe kids feel it today. I'm not sure if it's true or not. They feel other pressures, but I know coming out, it was like, "What are you gonna be when you grow up? What are you gonna be?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?" It was actually it was never like, "What are you gonna be?" It was like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna go to college for? What are you gonna do?" And I didn't know. At like 18,
Yeah.
I'm like, "I like playing the drums and I like playing football, and I still can do both, so I guess that's what I wanna do, but I know
Yeah.
I'm probably not gonna go to the pros, like, and even if I do, the shelf life's like
Yeah.
mid-20s, so, okay, great. What am I gonna
And then
do?
what? Yeah.
No one ever asked you who you wanted to be, and so you kinda just go along, and then sometimes it feels like you're totally lost, like, it feels like you don't know
Oh,
why you're in this seat or you're taking this
and
course.
nobody stops and goes, dude, everyone feels that way, right?
Right,
Like, and nobody goes, everyone feels lost sometimes. The most put together person in the world had
right.
moments in time where they're going to college and going like, is this really what I want to do? Like, or
Yeah,
this,
and I think it's harder in some ways. I think the last 20 years has been harder on younger folks because of social, like, for all the good things
yeah,
that it's done, it's created this, artificial kind of void where it's like, I have to know because
yeah,
everyone else seems to know because of the filter or the way that in other words, like, I
mhm,
can experience my
yeah,
reality in a way that's pure dopamine, and so I think it's become harder to actually know,
yeah,
but what's interesting about what you said is, like, the vantage point was not like you set out to go, become a venture capitalist, but yet you are the type of venture capitalist you are because you understand what it means to work hard, hustle, and go knock on doors to find a machine
yeah,
part that you could maybe
yep,
reservice for a better deal to go buy a bike. And then you also had the frustration of just simple stuff like, why is there so much friction between me moving 10,000 little dollars from this account to that account right over there? I can see the bank peer to peer,
yeah,
right? But you guys
yeah,
aren't peer to peer. You're dealing with some centralized ledger somewhere that no one understands, no one trusts, and your
yeah,
computers suck, by the way, because I'm hacking them as a kid, right? Like you're
yeah,
all that, and then you go to Countrywide, and you're like, oh, this is pure evil because they're pushing debt
dude.
down my
I
throat. You make
by the way, somebody, this is just a total aside because this is nonsense. You're recapping it really really well too. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but we got some extra time. You were saying so
yeah, yeah.
at
We're not
Countrywide. One of
running.
the funny things I did is my boss comes up to me one day. He goes, you know how to use Flash, right? I think I saw that one somewhere. I'm like, yeah, 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 totally. I didn't totally know how to use it yet, but I knew I could figure it out. And
Right.
it was cool because the screensavers on our computer, I have the source files that this big agency that, Countrywide paid like $1 million to. They gave me the source files. And I just found out that one of the 7 top executives at the company, like was like, he moved or he got let go, whatever. He's like, so I'm going to put my face because literally the screensaver on hundreds of thousands of countrywide computers, it would like go this blue color, and then it would show the face of Anthony Mozillo. He was the CEO
Oh
of
yeah.
Countrywide, right? He's the guy that was like the face of evil for a minute, right? Like after
Yeah.
the crisis, they'd show his face, and it would be like integrity, and then it would show like another
Okay.
executive's face, and it would be like resilience, like this corporate BS, like, 7 pillars of whatever's. And he's like, this guy doesn't work at the company anymore. So can you make my headshot go during when his thing was supposed to go? And then everybody at Countrywide will see my headshot. And I was like, sure. So like I built it in like a day or two. And so I technically had made as like, again, a early 20s, literally dude who's making the least amount of money of anyone in the company, basically. Like I'm in the lowest tier. Like maybe there's people who made less, but like couldn't be much less. Like, because
Right.
I was basically barely over minimum wage. Um, you know, and I'm making the screensaver for the whole company. And I remember
We'll probably
joking
get
that
your
because
guy promoted because he's basically using you to make himself, get
yeah,
another upgrade of job. Yeah,
yeah, it was so funny.
yeah. So then you go and you see all the ins and I get nerd out. I have lots of
Yeah,
countrywide stories from '02 on that we will do offline off of next time we see. But you go through that and then you kind of see it at its most manipulative worst and its most
yeah,
extractive worst before it hits the fan because you were there before it hit the fan. Um, and then you go to MySpace and MySpace is having its moment
yeah,
and that's like this juxtaposition now of wait, there's this whole world that could exist that needs to exist that's kind of grassroots organic and just seems to
yeah,
make a ton of sense where peer to peer, customer to customer, like frictionless, like we're enabling these things now
yeah,
that didn't exist before, and they're at scale. Like they could go
yeah,
somewhere. And again, MySpace didn't work, right? It worked for a little, and then it didn't work. It didn't
yeah.
win. But
Well,
at the end of the day,
it didn't win long term, but at one point as a I think
well,
$8 or $12 billion company,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then somebody sold it for a few $100 million, and then Fox
Well, Rupert bought it
extracted a
for
shit ton of
500
value.
million. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but they were printing money for a while because it
right.
was the most trafficked website on the internet, more than Google at the
Yeah,
time. That's crazy, right?
yeah,
Like,
and
yeah,
so you kind of got this, serendipitous. You called it luck, but serendipity, like all the above. You kind of just got this little ride that exposed you to these critical junctures in society, money, culture, tech, and yet all of it's kind of like we're not there yet. So then you get into crowdfunding. Crowdfunding fights its battles because now I'm assuming it's like 2013 ish, maybe 12,
yeah,
11.
yeah. So I actually launched the crowdfunding platform. We started experimenting in like 2008. Me and my old partner from that business. He's a rock star. He was the chief performance architect at MySpace. So he was in charge of the most trafficked website on the internet and making sure it stayed online and performed well.
Mm.
Like so, this guy. But again, he was also like a punk rocker kind of guy that wanted to break the system and figure things out. So he wasn't super excited to be like he loved the challenge of that, but like you could tell he wanted to build things, and we were building all sorts of things. And what's funny is you mentioned grassroots. The first version of the website I think I launched was called Grassroots Lending because or Grassroots Funding or something like that because the word crowdfunding didn't even exist yet.
Right.
We just called it, yeah, grassroots lending or peer to peer financing, whatever we were trying to come up with at the time. But we started building it, but I really quit my job to go in full time to it and try to make it a serious thing in 2012. And that's around the time too that Obama signed the Jobs Act, which we didn't believe in the industry. I was pushing against my friends saying, he's never going to sign this. No politician's ever going to agree to these things. But some genius, a guy in our space rebranded it to the Jobs Act instead of the Fair Fundraising Something Act. They changed it to Jobs
Right.
Act, and post financial crisis, what politician could vote against something called the Jobs Act? It was genius.
Right.
And so they made it legal to raise money
It's great.
online, sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is great context for what I want to wind up our conversation on now, what you think it means. But I want to get into clarity and some
Yeah.
of that too.
Oh yeah.
Genius. But this is again really important
Yeah.
kind of historical context because they all pair together, right? So all get it's rebranded to the Jobs Act. It gets passed, essentially allows for now crowdfunding among non-accredited investors. There was this whole
Yeah.
fight around consumer, all the same stuff. It's always the
Yeah.
same stuff, right? We got to
Yeah.
protect the consumer. Oh, we don't have any problem ripping their face off with
Oh, good.
Countrywide mortgage loan if they
They're
make
protecting
$11.
them. We'll just protect them from an
We
asset
got to
class that's
protect
the
them from,
only that's the only one that can create generational wealth for them. You know?
yeah, let's just
But
protect them.
gamble all you want.
Right. Yeah, well, we can't. Yeah, go gamble all you want. Go take the debt as much as you need,
Yeah.
but just please protect them from the guy that might actually do something that would empower them. Because we need them continuing to go grab bricks of cash and lug it across the thing, or fight for a $50 wire fee or whatever, or wait in line hoping that they get to send that money home Friday night
Yeah.
because they have enough average daily balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you don't have to. Again, and this is just, I think, really good context for why someone is in the early stage of fintech and of blockchain and crypto for the last decade, like you have been. So the evolution into that was, you know, if there's anything else you want to fill in that you think's material, but I want to get into kind of where we are now because you've been through several cycles. So a lot of what's happening now is kind of same old thing as, every 4 years. Oh, well,
Yeah.
winter and winter and winter.
Yeah.
But, this time I want to understand from you as an investor who's, got to
Yeah.
hit home runs and who has a bunch of founders you care about that you've invested in,
Yeah.
whose time horizon, they're getting tired, right? Maybe they're scared, maybe they're worn out, maybe they haven't failed yet where it's clean and crisp. Maybe they're just
Yeah.
like walking wounded and they're out of steam, and you're trying to, how do you work through this next period? And where are you on the net positive, net negative, net neutral side as far as where we go from here? Like,
Yeah.
not just with obviously
Yeah.
Bitcoin and things like that, but with the innovation side of that ecosystem, because, a lot of people that have been in the space that have the same conviction you did are fatigued,
Oh, for sure.
right?
I mean, it's been hard. I mean, I'm both lucky, but also, I made the bed I sleep in terms of, the long-term side of things. Trying to say not unlucky, but like still waiting and in that grind, right? Where it's like, uh, um, in our space because so one thing I knew I was not good at, and it's not me, right off the bat in the crypto space, right? Like I understood Bitcoin early. So, because I met Tim Draper. Tim Draper invested in that 2012 company. I met his son
Mm,
right then too, Adam Draper, who does Boost VC. And Boost VC was the first group. He was actually a client of ours. We helped him launch Boost as a crowdfunding platform for a couple months. It was called Boost Funder. And then he realized he could run accelerator program. Like that was what he wanted to do. Like that's what he thought he'd be good at. And so he kind of shifted into that. So he started Boost, and Boost did Bitcoin companies.
right.
So all that to say is I learned about Bitcoin early because I go to their demo days and things like that. It wasn't my full-time job until later, but I learned about it. But I learned very quickly when there was tokens and all these things at the early days of 2017 and Ethereum and stuff like that, that I'm not a trader. Like I'm not a guy who, you know, I can, and I'd want to buy a token for, a dollar and sell it for $2
Right.
the next day or whatever, or for 10 cents to 50 cents, whatever. But I'm not,
You're not wired that way.
I'm not wired that way. I'm not hovering over the
Me
computer
neither.
watching every little thing. Like I'm just not a trader. That's not me. There's people who are really good at it because they're wired that way, and I'm the long-term guy. I like building something from nothing, and I'm
Yep.
cool with being patient and waiting and helping and participating. And I'm really good at the operations of getting from 0 to 1. Not as great from the operations. Like I don't think I would be, at least at this stage in my life, maybe I'd be better than I was when I tried to do it, on a company 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I'm not the guy that can scale from 15 employees to 1,000 employees. Like, I just don't know if I'm that guy. But I do know that I can be extremely helpful from 0 to 1, from 1 to 10. And I love it. Like, I'm into it. Like, and the fact that I get to bounce from company to company, and one might be a founder who's feeling pretty negative because of what you just talked about. And I get to be their hype man and be like, look at what you're doing, look at what you can do. You got this, I can be that. It's easier to be that for somebody else than for yourself, I think, too.
Sure.
So I I've gone through it, and you learn things. And by the way, what I've learned too is the companies that powered through those tough times, every one of my companies, and I've learned through Tim and even through Adam, at Boost, is that most of the companies who become the really big successful companies, most of our most successful companies had moments where the founders were like, we're 2 months away from not being able to make payroll, you know, and they figured it out. And sometimes those situations are what makes them good at what they do. So I think that, I'm lucky, and I'm lucky that I didn't do those trading kind of things. So even when in the early crypto days, what we would tell people is we're okay with investing in equity, we're okay with investing in tokens, but we're still going to have an early stage venture model. So I'm not investing in a token because I'm going to sell it in 4 days, or even with the thought of selling it in 4 days. If there isn't a real business here, if you're not taking it seriously and not the right person and not planning on this even being a business 10 years from now, this isn't a deal for us. Right. And so we set ourselves up with only companies that were building long term products. And most of it was equity and not like tokens. So a lot of our friends who bought tokens, and had tokens during the different crashes in crypto and stuff like that, and to this day are sitting on tokens that are worth pretty much nothing, and so they went from having a, $50 million, $100 million fund to having tokens worth, collectively a few $100,000, maybe, if they could actually even sell them. So those people basically, like an entrepreneur, are out of business. But we were super long term, and because of that, it helped shape us. And we didn't always go with the narrative too. So
Mhm.
people talking about tokens and this and that, and we believe in all of it, but we also understood that we're not getting our utopia yet, right? Like what I wanted was me and you to be able to transact however we want, as long as we're not breaking laws. And again, I know that that's subjective, right? Because what
Yeah.
laws we agree on
Right.
versus laws, but you know, no, nothing like fraud, nothing like that's taking advantage of people, right? Like we should be able to do it, right? And if I have $100 and I want to buy a product from you on the other side of the world and it's $100, we should be able to do it without a million middlemen. Or if I want to have a bank that doesn't use my money the way that the traditional banks do, I should be able to do it. We're not in that utopian DeFi world, and we're not going to get there for a long time, in my opinion. Or we're getting closer, but it's just not the way it happens. But there, all the infrastructure and all of the things that were long term and that were important apply to banks. And if us as humans, kind of similar to uh, uh, the way we talked about stuff previously, but like if enough people like the paycheck thing, enough people got pissed off, they had to allow us to just put our money in the bank like automatically, right? Because it's also cheaper. Like it just doesn't make sense. Eventually, right? What happens when all of us can get savings accounts that earn way higher interest rates through DeFi and things like that? Is everyone going to go to DeFi? Probably not anytime soon. But will the banks have to start competing so that they don't lose their customers?
Which is a great
Yeah,
segue, right?
yeah,
Because for those who haven't stayed on top of it, one of the
yeah,
things I've written about quite a bit, um, not recently, but about a year ago when there was some inflection points is, the Genius Act passed. It had bipartisan support. It went through, but then
yeah.
the market structure, the capital market structure around it really needed to be put in place. And so that is what is now known, and maybe you've seen, as the Clarity Act for those who are not on top of it. And essentially, the Clarity Act also passed the House with bipartisan support, both houses. It's now been stuck in Senate. It didn't pass the other day. It got out of the committee with a 15-9 in favor of, but then it's being held up, and now it's becoming again this political football. They went into recess. But if you get through all of the
Yeah.
noise, and I'm interested if you have any takes on this
Yeah.
from your perspective that clarify it. But if you get through any noise, there's really kind of four pieces of it. If you can remove, all the stuff around whose politician you hate and like more, right? Because again, I'm not
Depends on the day.
Yeah, I don't want to get political here, but the reality is no law ever got passed in this country, at least in the last 250 years, without.
Forever.
So when someone is all over X saying the crypto lobby is paying for this bill and you need to ban it, well, then who's paying you to talk about it?
Exactly.
Right. I mean, a normal person would just go, great. So which lobby's paying you? Because last time I checked, $175,000 doesn't buy you the house you live in. So, so again, if we put all that aside and we just go,
Without getting political.
right, well, but
It's okay. I love this.
going on, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
actually going on? And what does it mean or not mean to an industry and
Exactly.
to investing in that industry? There's a couple things. And one of those things is essentially, do we create the ability for there to be free market competition for interest rates, for
Yeah.
deposits on account? One of the things that the people for it are arguing is stablecoins should be able to pay rewards and things like that. Now, those show up in the way of 4.9% or 5% interest, right? Well, a bank goes, well, wait a minute, we have all this regulation and we missed the boat on this, but now we're going to play catch up basically because we can't pay 5% interest, so we're not competitive. And a whole generation of people across Gen X and down, obviously in the Gen Z, grew up digitally native.
Yeah.
You know, for them, they don't have cash anyway. So for
Yeah.
them, like their phone is everything. That's their wallet. That's everything. So the dollars are dollars, USDC, whatever pays more is what's going to get my attention and my. So it became kind of, well, if this passes in its current thing, then we kind of just opened up a free market that we've had the monopoly on for savings accounts,
Yeah.
theoretically. So how can we
Yeah.
stop it? So one of the biggest contentions is around whether it's a reward, whether it's a deposit on account, whether it's interest on deposit and subject to those laws, or whether it's this new thing that kind of is a hybrid of loyalty and points like Delta, but
Yeah.
with dollars. And so they're going back and forth on that. And some of the things that I think are fair, regardless of political party or side, is the ethics around that, the corruption. I find it funny, haha, of Joe Pesci funny, that the people talking about ethics and anti-corruption are also trading stock every day uh,
Uh-huh.
in the market. But that aside, again,
With the insider knowledge of what rules and laws they're going to pass and what things they're going to put in front of people that
right,
will affect the markets, right? That's not just, hey man, they should be able to trade just like we do. It's like they're in charge of turning on the electrical grid for Tesla the day before they decide to buy a lot of Tesla stock, or their husband or family member buys that stuff without the knowledge, of course. They
right.
just happen to get asymmetrically lucky way more often than the rest of us.
So for those who are trying to keep up with, well, why is there a battle at all? Assume that they had an agreement on how these things were going to be treated.
Yeah,
There's also disagreement around who the regulatory body is, right?
yeah,
Because part of this touches on security law, part of this touches on commodities, part of this touches on banking. And so between FINRA and SEC and CFTC, there's this battle of, well, who's gonna regulate it? And then there's the IRS, right? IRS,
yeah,
forever has said Bitcoin's a commodity. And so, who's the ultimately governing body? And and then, who are the players? You have Coinbase, who a couple months back decided they didn't like the language anymore because they thought that essentially it had been corrupted off of its initial language, and so they pulled support. Then they came back with a compromise. So we're pretty close, except we just went to recess without you know,
yeah.
a passing. And one of the things is, when does a reward become a bank deposit by another name? That's one of the things around stablecoins. Now, stablecoins are here to stay. They are inherent to the dollar's hegemony maintaining itself. So
Yeah.
there's
They're
no
they're like anybody, even the people who are uh uh I don't think that there's a future, right? People are scared that crypto will mess with the American dollar on, some politicians and some groups go, "Oh my gosh, if we go to crypto, we lose the American dollar. If we lose the American dollar, we lose our power in the world and all these things." Um, if stable coins are not adopted, that really does happen. Because regardless of Bitcoin and crypto and whatever, for the same reason why you and I and younger people don't give a crap what bank they're at and can just bounce from app to app, and so banks have less of that moat, the dollar has less of the moat. Unless uh, stable coins that are connected to the American dollar are the next evolution, because that
Yeah,
is the next
Genius
evolution regardless.
Genius Act, right, and Genius Act, in layman's terms, Genius Act kind of secured that, meaning it basically created the stablecoin US dollar treasury backing market.
Yeah,
Yes, you still have Tether, yes, you still have that, but it basically created the industry where, everybody rushed in to issue their version of a stablecoin and wants to do it on dollar rails because of the regulatory certainty.
yeah,
Clarity Act is telling you who can profit from that. In layman's terms, I'm
yeah,
oversimplifying. But why that matters is because, to our earlier conversations around banks do not like when other people eat their lunch,
yeah,
even if those people are smarter, faster, swifter, and more ethical. And so part of this battle is not just around banks trying to stop it so that they can be the only place where you can have money on deposit and earn an interest rate, but they're also they're trying to catch up because
yeah,
they dismissed it early as an innovation, and now it's here and it's
yeah,
obvious. And so now they're trying to basically just, as any good competitor would, not lose market share. And at the same time, there are real ethical concerns. There are real things that need to be put in place to protect consumers. So this is not just banks versus crypto people. That's the FUD. That's the noise. That's
yeah,
not the signal. The signal is market structure has a chance to be defined properly for the industry that's going to essentially become exponentially larger than the monetary system we have today. Because, in my opinion, you may agree, disagree, whether humans like crypto or not, we have AI agents that will outnumber us, according to certain reports I've seen recently, 1,000 to 1 as far as their internet calls. And if that means the traffic on the web is going to be 1,000 to 1 bot to human in a handful of years, well, then you could extrapolate the conversion of transactions via the web will also be
yeah,
orders of magnitude higher. Those transactions are going to happen 24/7,
yeah,
365 over Rails, and they're not going to wait for a Monday through Friday banking hour teller to
yeah,
do the transaction
yeah,
because the bot will not argue with them like you and I did.
yeah,
So the point being, whether human beings get crypto or not, or Bitcoin or not, or stablecoins or not, token economy is here,
yeah.
and that rail system needs to be deployed and defined. And
And hopefully ethical, and hopefully American for the politicians, right? I
right.
don't know if the people care as much as we used to, but I think we should in some ways, because even though we don't necessarily love, like, right, we're not saying nice things about the government right now in the way that they work, but we also would prefer it, I think, over most governments.
Well, yeah, I didn't know that. I don't know that on that you can say nice things about any government specific,
Yeah,
but I think you can say, you know what, the American rails for a global economy that values freedom and liberty at some level still,
yeah.
privacy at some maybe shred of existence still. You do not want President Xi making that choice.
Exactly. Because those people are like, I shouldn't say those people. They're diabolical and incredibly smart. Like, most of the politicians in China are engineers by trade, pre being politician, or by learning, right? They're incredibly smart. Not like our politicians are, and they didn't run in a normal political process. Our politicians are politicians. They're not engineers. They had to become popular by doing the shit that they do, not by being the smartest engineer, right? So there is a total difference in the diabolicalness of their rules and laws, and
Well, and
the no
and
tra-
you came from
yeah,
fintech, so you go back to that migrant worker who's walking in line to try and cash a check, and maybe not even have an account at that branch at Wells Fargo, but because
yeah,
the employer does the cash, they can cash it
yeah,
there because they can at least verify the source of funds is good because they don't have to trust another
mm,
bank's ledger to give somebody who's not on their ledger cash, right? So that's what was happening with that, and that happens every day. Check cashing places rip people off all day long. Money transfer
oh,
places
all the time.
off all day long. So if all of a sudden now I can have an app like Cash App or Block or Venmo or whatever, which everyone has,
Yeah,
and I can basically get essentially access to capital money in
yeah,
real time, no one cares how the plumbing's worked. right?
No.
But if all of a sudden you're gonna say those places can't give you 4.9% interest because somehow they're not consumer safe,
Yeah.
but the option is a bank that they can't get an account at, or if they can, is not gonna give them anywhere near that. How can you
And they'll
just
charge them fees for every little thing, and they'll piss them off and lock you in,
Oh,
and
you know,
yeah,
so I think the support for those who are saying, "Find a way to get this compromise done," is based on the fact that this is a net positive, not only for market structure, maintaining a rule of law that we understand and that could propagate into the next 100 years and become a real, lock-in for the dollar-based hegemony in some way, shape, or form in the rule of law. That's great. And then on the everyman level, it means that, yeah, access to competitive savings rates becomes a free market again. Because right now it's not a free market. It hasn't been
yeah,
forever. And, if you're going to tell me that you're worried about billionaires getting richer because people, rig the game, well, guess what? You got a lot of places you could look at capital structure, starting with Wall Street, before you worry about the crypto industry or stablecoins. Now,
yeah,
the
yeah,
point being, as an investor, what the heck do you do? Because you control anything I just said.
yeah,
You've been in the space investing with entrepreneurs, being a cheerleader, being a strategic, betting LP money and your own against the home run hitter. And I don't know, like you said, there's an inevitability to everything we just said because bots are going to keep going,
yeah,
whether we like it or not.
yeah,
The reality, though, is that we have no idea how this plays
yeah.
out. Does it even matter? And that's my real question to you. Does it even matter in the sense of materially what you're betting on because you take a longer term view, or is it impacting that?
Well, it impacts it in lots of ways, right? Because one, I again, I gotta look long term, right? I gotta not look always at what's happening right now, but what's gonna happen in the future. And something that isn't talked about very much, and I didn't even understand until I had to kind of do it myself, or I worked at a fund right before I kind of started our first venture studio. Um, we have to fundraise, right? When you talk about LP money, that means limited partner money, and in crypto, LPs might mean something else. So, limited partners are the investors in a fund, right? So I work for my investors. I'm kind of different in terms of a model because I created the venture studio, which kind of runs as a business off its own balance sheet kind of thing. So it's kind of somewhere in between working for myself and working for our investors. But I have a crazy responsibility that's much deeper than if I'm investing my own money, at least for my mindset, is I got to invest your money or some investors' money. And so I have to be really responsible, think about that future. But if I can't raise money myself because the current market is tough, then I have less firepower
Mhm.
but in uncertain times, those are the best times to make investments, right?
Yeah.
Because there isn't all this hype. The deals are better in our favor. Um,
Yeah, that
the
you
entrepreneurs, yeah,
shake out the opportunities because you gotta be partly insane and mission driven to be
yeah,
still in this space trying to grind away or start
it's
something. So you get it actually is the best time to invest
yeah,
in
yeah.
this market right
And
now.
you touched on the most important part. The actual entrepreneur has to be a true believer. They
Right.
have to be obsessed. Like, like I talk about it with the comparison to music and stuff like that. Like people, there is like music is to me at least the easiest way to explain this. Why would you want to be this entrepreneur who's struggling and really hard and who has this roller coaster ride, especially in times when it's not like hypey easy to raise money, do all these things. It's never easy to raise money, but like people make it seem that way. Easier, right? But like, right, why would you want to be an entrepreneur? It's like the hardest thing in the world. It's like saying, why do I like listening to punk rock music? I don't feel like I have a choice. Like it is my music. It is my thing. Do I like the Beatles? Do I like other music? Of course. But like if people went like, you know, why do you do a certain thing? Why like everybody has the thing they're obsessed with or they love that they feel internally they don't have a choice. The entrepreneur who loves what they're doing, who's going after something, they internally they might have choices. They might try to rationally think about it and be that, have that kind of brain and go, you know what, I could just also get a job and sit in a cubicle and my life would be easier, but I wouldn't be able to potentially do this thing. But you have to be nuts because it's a hard, hard, hard life, especially when most of the world or a big part of the world is betting against you. So that is makes it the best time. But going back to what you were saying, there is there's this rational with all the clarity stuff happening with movement, especially in the United States. You start learning and you start seeing, okay, things are moving. Things take much longer than you want them to ever, right? Things we talked about in 2018, our minds would be blown at what's changed
Yeah.
because I don't know if you say things out loud. Like I remember when people talk about 10K Bitcoin, 10K Bitcoin, 10K Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to hit $10,000. We were talking about it like it's inevitable. But did all of us actually invest our money and truly believe it? Because if all of us 1000% truly believe it, we'd all be billionaires right now because we would have put every cent we had, sold our cars, sold our homes, done everything into it. Then when it happened, it was like, yeah, we knew this was going to happen. But then you're like, holy shit, it just happened. So in 2018, we'd be looking at today, talking about something like the Clarity Act, and we'd be like, oh my gosh, greatest problem in the world to be waiting on the recess because of this.
Yeah.
Because even though we thought things like this were inevitable, we still didn't have full faith in the government, of course, and everything else. So where I'm getting to is things are going to progress, right? Like you said, certain things are inevitable.
Yeah, you
And
just
my job, yeah. And I was just going to say, my job is to not go, most people in the world, the rational people in the world are going to go, at almost any one of the startups we invest in and tell me 1,000 reasons why it will probably fail. My job is to look at Chris and go, what if he's right? What if he wins? Like I have to go and you find out people like Tim Draper, people like me, we're like insanely optimistic in a delusional way a lot of times, right? Like we like just like that entrepreneur who's like, crazy. We have to be that way about things. And I'm just like, I like people. So
I
it's
think
that way.
there's a couple of takeaways there I want to highlight that you said. I think one of them goes back to the human renaissance that I think we're in, that more and more people are talking about. But I think we're in this time where we're starting to recognize that we've actually dehumanized ourselves for the last 20 years or so because we've done all this amazing innovation and we've become so technologically um, proficient, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
entangled, for a better word, maybe,
Yeah.
that we've
We're
kind of
connected, but disconnected.
right. We're hyper connected and we are lonelier than ever and we are uncreative, like we're starved for meaning and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the same as if you just, ate sugar all day, right? Like you got all the dopamine, you get the high, but it takes more and more and more, and then you just get
You're getting
unhealthy.
you're getting all the calories.
Yeah, you're getting on the calories, but they're not the right kind of mix of calories. And then you start saying things like you just said, and you go, well, let me run that through ChatGPT or my favorite Claude model or whatever, right? And what would it tell me? And it would pretend like it knew what you were saying, and it would speak it in language. It says, well, humans have always been resilient, or humans always done this, but your percentages are 10%, or your success rate's going to be 1 out of 100 or whatever. And it'll give you the probabilities. It'll give you like
Yeah.
that, right? But a human still goes, yeah, but I got to do it.
Yeah.
And it'll make the illogical, irrational, seemingly insane choice to go this direction, even though it doesn't make sense and the math doesn't line up and
Yeah.
whatever. And yet enough people have done that through the history of our humanity where we are here. We have all
Yeah.
these things. We're talking to each other, to an
Yeah.
audience of thousands of people globally across, I
Yeah.
think, 85 countries that have tuned into this show at one point or the other. And we're doing it for basically zero,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like, that doesn't happen because a machine goes, you know what I want to do? I want to be able to live stream myself to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, no, a
Yeah.
machine doesn't decide. A human decides. I'd like to be able to talk to Alon and
Yeah.
not have to figure out, how to get
Yeah.
to LA next and do it.
Logistics and by the way, if we want to like film it and get like a crew or a setup and all the logistics and
So
everything.
I think the interesting thing is, the time you want the dry powder, the time you want the capital to deploy is now.
Mm.
And we're not saying you should rush in and do certain things now. What we're saying is this is when all the money is made, right? And everybody knows that when there's blood in the streets, when there's confusion, where's that? There's conviction or there's not. You have to ask yourself a couple questions. Are we putting AI back in the bag? Are we putting Bitcoin back in the bag? And no, you're not. You're never going to do that. Is the government able to control it? No, because they can control their citizens potentially. They could jail them, they could do that. But you can't stop humanity's search for its true essence, which is to be
Yeah.
free, to create, to find liberty, to do that. Water always finds its level.
Yeah.
And so it might create the Grand Canyon. It might take a billion years, but water always finds its level, and humans are no different. And I think that, investing in that is kind of why you can be optimistic, because when everything is dark, there's some kid with $1 and a dream, or with
Yeah.
no dollar and a
Yeah.
dream that wants your
Yep.
dollar. And you get reminded of the fact that not everybody's beat to hell. Not
Yeah.
everybody's down and out.
Well,
Somebody's angry enough to do something about it and be
yeah.
positive.
Yeah. Well, look, like, you're putting so many uh awesome kind of guides in my head of where to go, but like think about every story in history, the founding of America, the this, the that, whatever. Like, you know, we can pick those apart and go, "Oh my gosh, some of these people are bad people. Some of this is," but let's just think about the inspiring side of every immigrant story, every story we've ever heard of in our life, and most of it comes from something bad happening, right? Like, oh, we were treated so unfairly that eventually, we had a revolution, right? Like it's literally called the Revolutionary War or whatever, right? Like people, uh, um, people will eventually push back. We It's a little scary, right? Like you were saying, like, we're turning off some of our own humanity by doing these things. I had this feeling years ago. I remember explaining to people, like, I think the next step, what was funny is like FaceTime became a thing. And I went, this is the beginning of us trying to like regain our human like intimacy. And I don't mean like intimacy like sex, but like actually having human connection. And we found a way to use technology to have a better human connection, because this is better than a phone call, right? In terms of
Right.
connection. Um, but it's not better than us having a coffee together in real
No,
life or a
it's
beer
awesome.
together, right?
We're,
Okay.
we're having a
Yeah.
much longer conversation
Yeah.
that we've ever had,
Yeah.
but the two times that we were belly to belly felt different.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
we're having
for sure. And you could
today.
give each other a high five, you give each other a hug, you could have a beer together. It's a different kind of connection. And by the way, we're not going to evolve like we've evolved over billions of years or whatever, right? We're not going to evolve overnight to have that same like hormonal feeling,
Right.
brain feeling, tingling, whatever spidey sense that you get from being in the room with a human in our lifetimes or in probably 10 lifetimes. So there's that. And then, so the where I try to get positive, and I will say a few months ago, I had this insanely uncharacteristic negative view of everything, because the growth of AI got to a point where a lot of things that a few people had told me that I kind of went, I agree, but like in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it basically happened earlier this year in my opinion. Like I think whole categories of companies are dead now because of AI. I think the importance of certain engineers are way 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 higher, and the importance of, you know, the bottom half of engineers like early in their career are much, much lower for the average company and person, whatever. And then I was thinking about this in a group chat with my friends from high school, right? Like, uh, one of them's a firefighter. People work in all sorts of different categories and things, and some work in offices, some work blue collar jobs, whatever. And I said in the chat, I said, Sean, my friend who's a firefighter, I said, he's the only somebody asked about AI in the group chat, and they're like, Alon, what do you think? Techie nerd, like that's my role in the thing. I'm the computer nerd. And I was like, only person whose job is safe is Sean's, and I said that and I kind of felt bad saying it. I was like, why am I being so doom and gloom? That's not me. And then Sean joked back. He said, I don't know. And he said, shared a YouTube video of some Chinese firefighting robots. And I was like, well, you're the fired captain, so you'll have to be in charge of those robots for a while. But
Yeah, and
it
I
was it
think
was a joke. But like it is, if AI goes right, like perfectly right, right? And let's say the government treats everyone properly, and the powers that be, the most powerful people in the world treat everyone in the most utopian, wonderful way, right? We're going into like Wall-E, right? Like where, oh, everyone's fat and happy and fed. And I don't necessarily mean that physically, but maybe, like whatever. We're all happy, but are we actually satisfied? Do we actually have any purpose? Because what happens to you and I if we just went, everything's taken care of? You no longer have to work. I might go, you know what? I'll go hang out at the beach, draw pictures in the sand, and make art. Maybe I will thrive and be happy doing that because I kind of wish I did that all the time, but not really, because if I wished I did that all the time, I probably would have figured out a career doing that. But
Right.
let's say I'm happy doing that. How many of our friends and family and people would have something to do? Because our careers become 90+% of our identity. Like people just be, what would you do? Like drink all day? Like what do people do when there's nothing to do? It's really scary. And so I started going down this rabbit hole of, holy shit, this is scary. But for every one of those scary things, there are opportunities, right? Like I think that there's going to be a renaissance of like family owned businesses or small businesses, because now I don't need to compete necessarily with all of these big giant companies, right? Like McDonald's can lower their margins by having, AI tablets or whatever that take your order, but now so could I, you
Right.
know? And
And
I
and
could
by
kick
the
the
way,
shit out of McDonald's
maybe
in
that's
terms of like a burger.
exactly yeah. And oh, by the way, maybe that's exactly the opposite of what I should do. Right? Like
Yeah.
I agree. I think that I'm hyper focused on local. I think
Yeah.
part of the fear that people have when you see something as permissionless as something like Bitcoin, which, started this whole move, right? Um, or peer-to-peer transactions or stables or, you and I being able to transact without anyone in the middle at any time of day in real numbers, right? For whatever we decide to do, then everybody that has the current power structures that allow them to kind of gatekeep that freaks out because their very business model now just got, put on notice. And similarly, it happened with AI. Like when you see companies that go, oh, no, MIT says 95% of investments in AI don't work out. Well, that's not a technology readiness issue. That's an organizational readiness
Yeah.
issue. The entire organization was staffed on a hierarchy of a pyramid that has a bunch of people down here that are basically just getting paid to take up space and do certain things, right? And I'm not diminishing the fact that they have value or they have worth. They have a search for
Yeah.
meaning. Like everyone, all human beings need meaning. That's the
Yeah.
one thing that we have that the machines do not. We need meaning. And how we get that meaning is however we get it. But if we're vacant it doesn't matter what else we have. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if we got trillions of dollars. If we
But
have
that
no
also, how many people in those middle positions feel like they actually have any power, any real meaning? Like you get
Well, they
into this
probably don't
vacuum,
in
there's
their
a
job,
lot of
right?
depression too.
They
Yeah.
probably don't in their job, but they
Yeah.
have a certainty of a check, and then they go find their
Yeah.
meaning at home, coaching
Yeah.
sports, and so the fear becomes, if I lose that certainty of the check, now I can't do the thing I get meaning from over here because I might have to find and learn something new, and all of that is very normal, and
Yeah.
I've had several dark moments, and again, I'm a lifelong optimist, pragmatist, but I've
Yeah.
had several dark moments. I think anybody honest in
Of
any
course.
position of this
It's
is
just
going,
something that our parents' generation would never say out loud,
right.
you know, would not say in front of 1,000 people. But like nowadays it's become somewhat normal and okay.
It's
And I
also where
don't
the
say like we're not sitting on this thing going like, yeah, man, depression, 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 right?
No, but
But
it's
but
also
it's normal, it's human. And everyone has different family members, different families, and everyone has had these moments, whether it's in themselves or in somebody around them. And they're lying if that's not true.
and it's also where the answer lies, because for those people who are listening to this that have significant assets, which a lot of them do, whatever that may be, couple million bucks to hundreds of millions of dollars, then they need the same thing that the person who doesn't have it is in a different way, right? Because at the end of the day, when the S&P goes up the way it has, when when the markets go up, when things are that we can argue over where it's going next and whether it's going to crash, whether it's not. But the reality is none of the people who have those assets are going to be homeless tomorrow if it drops
Yeah.
10% or goes up percent. And if it goes up 10%, it's not going to really change it. If your bills are paid beyond your lifetime and you're wealthy enough and you're worried about passing it down, you're not really going to be motivated for another 10 basis points or another 10% lift. It doesn't mean you don't want it. Of course, if it's there, you want it.
Yeah.
But the point is that's going to fill the void. And at the same time, what I think AI has done is it's brought us back to this recognition that we've put ourselves into this material chain of consumption that has dehumanized us to a point where we're going, what do I want to be doing? And then we've tried to we've tried to create these polarities of, oh, well, then I have to be super conscious or I have to be that. And it's like, no, it's not black or white. Like there is no like the pendulum swung way of the year. Like, don't just go over here and abandon this and be like, that's it. I'm done with it all. Capitalism sucks. Like, no, that's
Well,
not the answer.
again,
The answer is creation.
yeah,
The
and
answer in creation.
I didn't want to
It's
interrupt. I'm
shared.
sorry. I was just going to say, there's also what we believe is capitalism, what we believe is socialism, aren't
Right,
actually
right.
those things.
They
Because
actually
when we
are.
mentioned
Right,
capitalism and free markets, we also, in the same breath, mentioned politicians who abuse those powers. That's not a free
banks.
market, right? That's
And
corruption.
banks,
That's
right?
not capitalism.
Right,
So my friends, my best friends in the world, right? My most liberal, crazy punk rocker friends go anti-capitalism, but we don't have capitalism. The same way
right.
that a socialist government doesn't actually have socialism. They have a dictator,
When
right? Like,
Coinbase can't just say, "I wanna pay 5% for your tokens on deposit with us," without having a bank tell them that it's against the
mm,
law. We don't live in a free market. We live in a
yeah,
banking-led market, right? So,
yeah,
to your point, we 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 wipe like, we wash over these things, and
yeah,
we kind of think we know what they mean, and then we don't, and then what that depression forces us to do is actually rethink and go, "Well, what is it?" And, there is no easy. There's only hard, but we get to choose our hard, as my wife would say, right? Because
yeah.
easy is phantom thing we want in our mind, but the truth is if we had it easy, we'd be miserable. Like what makes this conversation fun is we're talking about the things that were setbacks or the things that we didn't want to do more of, the evils,
Mm,
the goods, the bads. And that context is everything. And we have how many years we have on this rock. And we
yeah.
have a chance to do something with it. And human beings at any level want to feel the same six human needs they've always wanted to feel, right? And growth and contribution of those higher order functioning needs. So, I think that's what entrepreneurship does. I think that's what you get to
Yeah.
live in. You get to see people that that your investment or your belief, your term sheet could change something 20, 30 years from now that you can't even see. Because even if that kid failed, like even if you bet on, whoever they
Yeah.
were, and that deal ran its course and 7 years from now blew up like a fireball on the runway, no one wanted it. But 20 years from now, that next idea, long after you've invested,
Yeah.
became SpaceX because that kid had someone believe now.
Yeah.
And your contribution was there because you gave that entrepreneur the spark and the belief that they could do something. And even if that
Mhm.
one thing didn't, and again, I'm speaking for you. I'm not putting words in your mouth. I would
Dude, I
imagine.
love this. I'm pumped. Like I need to start every day with this. I'm gonna play this on repeat. I
But I
love
would
this.
imagine that's why Tim still does it. I would imagine that's
Oh,
why
for sure.
you do it because there's a piece of you that knows the meaning you have in a term sheet you write is I want to hit the home run, but and that's why you do it. But the second order, third order knockoff effects are knowing somewhere down the road you became a ripple in that pond for humanity because what if you believing was the first time anybody did? And what if all of a sudden capital was available to kids that are in the bottom 4 billion? Because they
Yeah.
have a mobile phone and now they could get 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand to go start an idea to solve a problem in their village or whatever. What if that was available because it didn't have to go through a swift banking system? And what if that belief changed it?
Just that they were told that something exists. Like I didn't know. I always give this example to investors, like in a random aside, or I used to. I had to buy a condo 15 years ago with my wife, and the job I had before I quit to start my own business that I didn't mention was at IMDb, the Internet Movie
Yeah.
Database. It's owned by
Yep.
Amazon. I got
Yep.
Amazon shares. I sold all my Amazon shares to help put a small down payment, very small down payment. I didn't even get to the threshold of not having mortgage insurance, like from 3% to 10%. I sold my Amazon shares to put a down payment on our condo to lower the payment by like $100 a month or whatever it did, because I wanted to have kids with my wife. We want to make sure we could live on one income, human needs and what we want to do. And I would explain this to investors that I sold my Amazon shares, and they're like, "Why'd you do that?" I'm like, "'Cause it was the only cash I had. This is all I have." And they go, "Well, why didn't you borrow against it from this thing?" And I'm like, "I didn't know that was available." Again, I grew up in the back of an auto parts shop. What was available to me was cash. If you don't have cash, go collect. That's it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I don't know these things exist. And if 90% of the world doesn't know certain things exist, and by the way, they didn't exist for us. most of the time, but they do now because of DeFi,
Yeah.
because of these things, because of apps. You know, people just need to know these things exist and know that they can do things, right? A
Well,
random kid
yeah,
can be an
that's
entrepreneur.
yeah, and that is
Yep.
that is a passion you and I share from our different purviews. I mean, I am the reason why I do these things, I'm so grateful you've spent the last
Yeah.
almost 2 hours with us, is because awareness is the start. It's the spark, and books and awareness and interviews and these kind of things being free, being available to someone with a connection or with
Mhm.
time to invest in themselves. It didn't even exist 25 years ago. I mean, when I got started, I had to go to Barnes& and Noble. I was grateful Barnes& and Noble and Borders existed because I could go
Yeah.
buy on tape, right? Like,
Yeah. And
it's
even just sit sometimes in the bookstore and read the books. You didn't have to buy it too, you
I
know?
I did that a lot.
Mm.
I did that a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact is that doing that work and then creating awareness of the architectures. Hey, you don't have to hold all your entities in one LLC or all your assets in one LLC.
Yeah.
If you have technology, you put it here. You do like the work that I do to really help people kind of protect and preserve it is all based around doing more with less. Like it seems more complex, but at the end of the day, like if people knew how m- how many things I've done where I had no idea where the next dime was coming from. Where I
Sure.
mean, I've been out of the country with less than $1,000 on credit cards and mountains of debt and it unlock and speaking or doing something like from a cash flow standpoint, like there have been so many times where not only was it, oh, we're gonna run out of payroll in 2 months, like, no, we missed it. We
Yeah.
missed Friday, and now what do we do? And
And that's the worst feeling in the world, by the
oh,
way, for
it
anybody, because it shows also the certainty of a paycheck isn't as certain as people realize, right? You know this from the corporate world, but also in the small business world. But just being in charge of that, being like the person writing the check, it's the heaviest responsibility anyone can have.
yeah. And I think that's the other thing is that people don't appreciate when we get into these demonizing roles of, you know, the 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 class warfare stuff that people use to gaslight us to get us to vote a different way and just
Yep.
react, right? When we don't pause, there is no right or wrong, right? I think what you said is so true. Like an entrepreneur, I believe they're born. I think they can be cultivated and nurtured, but and exposed, meaning they can be
Yeah.
released. But I think they're born because just like artists are born, just like creatives, they may not, Mozart may have never found a piano.
Yep.
And if he hadn't, then he wouldn't be Mozart as we know him. But fortunately, somehow, divine
Yeah.
intervention, providence, whatever you want to believe, put him in front of a damn piano somehow,
Yeah.
right? And so we all benefit from that. And truthfully, like, entrepreneurs are the same way. I used to think it was a better way of living. I learned very
Yeah.
early on that it's not, right? Because that was me just
It's a
trying to self feel
yeah.
good. It is not glamorous,
Well,
but
but
it
you get
is.
a job. You get a job, you sit in a cubicle or you wherever you end up getting a job, you get a job, you're delivering auto parts, sit in a cubicle, whatever part of your lifespan or job you have, if you have that gene, it doesn't matter if it's the best job you ever had in the life. It doesn't matter if your best friend is sitting right next to you, you're fucking miserable. You
Yeah.
are like and it's again,
I know if you gave me
yeah.
100 kids, who grew up in an auto shop
Yeah.
and then their first job was where yours was, and then they went to a bank teller, and then they got, whatever, their brother
Yeah.
had some tech stuff, so they got
Yeah.
some tech stuff, and they put it on a resume, and then they got an opportunity to become an assistant to a guy high up at
Yeah.
Countrywide, and then they lost that job, and then they went to MySpace. You give me 100 kids who have that, they don't end up where you end up. There is a DNA that happens in your brain to connect those dots that is uniquely the way it is because of your entrepreneurial DNA. I firmly convinced of that. I've tried to quit being an entrepreneur and investor so many times. Anyone who's listening to this, who's a small business, probably, why the hell am I doing this? There's a
I
piece,
tried to get a job when my company failed. I tried to do it
sure,
and
horrible, unemployable, or just the things didn't show up. And then before the job that you thought you really wanted, that you were going to go finally secure it up and just stop being crazy, then all of a sudden Draper calls and he's like, "Hey, you want to do something more?" Like something happens, and you go, "Oh." And they, it's like Al Pacino, they suck me back in. I think, it's just part of accepting that we're all here to basically experience this turn of this however many turns we get
Yeah.
at our highest and best. And for some, that's gonna be a lower frequency, for some, that's gonna be higher. If you're listening to this still, your higher frequency, your capital matters no matter how little it is. Putting it to work matters. Yes, getting an interest rate, passing it down to whoever you want to pass it down to, all those things are important. But at the end of the day, like it ain't going to make you happy unless you felt like There was meaning to it
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
I can tell you as a fan now, even more, I always liked you, the little bit I knew you, but now I know you better, that you are doing something meaningful, bro. Like that, you have
Thank
no idea. I don't care what your biggest success is in the portfolio between now and 20 years from now.
you. Yeah.
One of those failures is going to be somebody who, when our kids are experiencing whatever they're experiencing, talking to each other in the equivalent, right?
Yeah.
But whatever that
Yeah.
looks is going to be because of one of those kids who failed that was first written and first given a term sheet by Draper Goren blockchain. And it may
Yeah.
not even be in the industry. They might be raising coconut farms. Who knows? But
Hey, yeah, but there's this that's the thing is, I actually, using the word token or even using the word blockchain, I'm pushing against it a lot, even though it's in the name of our thing, because it's just digitizing everything. And, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, we weren't, utilizing the internet the way we do right now. It was just a different way. And 10 years before that, it was even more different. But like we used to have to say, right, we're starting an internet company.
right,
Nobody
right,
says that anymore.
right,
Because by the way, if you go to the hot dog stand in front of the Barnes and Nobles, 5 minutes from me, I could go to that hot dog stand, get an IBC root beer and a hot dog and be stoked and talk to the dude who, by the way, that dude used to be in front of the Home Depot when I was growing up. So I know the dude basically my whole life, even though I don't know the dude. Right. Um, right. I could go there or I could go on my phone and with an app, I can order that same hot dog delivered to my house. That hot dog stand is an internet company, is more of an internet company than what an internet company was 10 years ago when you're pitching to investors.
right,
So is there gonna be a blockchain company or a
right.
token company, an RWA company? It's just gonna be, "Oh, yeah, we created a better thing. We created a
It's
better."
just gonna be yeah, it's just gonna be either a human or an agentic or a human and agentic ecosystem of
Yeah,
consumers buying and selling something for each other that they need in that moment. It's and I say this all the time about AI, like I
yeah.
crack up. Everybody's putting AI in their thing, everybody's got the thing. All the same reasons as they started an internet company that did a .com or they were a finance company.
Hype. Yeah.
And it's like, or we're a tech company or whether it's like, God, just do what you do. Like if you're L'Oreal, don't say you're a tech company. The woman or the man buying or whoever buying your product does not care. They want hope, right? Maybelline used to sell hope as their core value. Yeah, hope that I might get a call. Hope that I feel better about myself. Hope, hope, hope in every lipstick. That's what you sell. You don't sell technology. You don't sell services. AI is not going to be something we talk about because you'll either be in business or you won't. We don't sit here and talk about, thank God we're an
Yeah,
electric business because we're able to use this computer because it's plugged into our awesome electric system. Like, we don't do that. We don't
yeah.
sell hotels without beds and sheets either.
Well,
Spirit Air,
dude,
they tried to sell you an air flight with nothing in it and you had to buy all the rest. Like, it doesn't work when you,
yeah,
when you try it.
yeah. It makes no sense. You know what's crazy? Just on this same lines that you mentioned, and we got to get moving
We're going to
too.
wrap this up,
But
everybody.
yeah,
Thank you.
but uh, the most successful, and I thought it was so stupid. When you see something like this on TV, and then you learn about it later, and these are the things I hook onto, like the way my brain works. But the most successful car, at least up until that moment, car media campaign and marketing campaign ever for a car. And it makes sense when you think about it in hindsight because cars are almost a commodity now. They almost all look the same and there's just basic little changes and features, at least, in every car other than maybe like a Tesla and one or two others. But like it's a commodity. And the most successful car company marketing campaign that was ever done was when Subaru shifted their campaigns to be love. That's what makes a Subaru. And it was basically like a feel good commercial. It didn't talk
Uh,
about horsepower. It didn't talk about like dude things like, yeah,
yeah,
man, it goes, you got a 18-to-1 torque ratio, blah, 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 whatever. Didn't mention horsepower, didn't mention towing, didn't mention all wheel drive.
yeah.
It was just, this is the car you take camping and, love, like whatever. Right.
Yes.
And it's the way it feels.
And
Uh,
because you were selling that car to a human. If you were
yeah.
selling that car to another car, then you might have talked about those things. And I think that's the interesting time we're in right now is humanity is the thing that will become scarce. It'll become cool again, but not in a anti-technology kind of way, in a like we don't worry about infrastructure. We're grateful for
Yeah,
infrastructure. We
it'll
want
be
the
a
infrastructure.
commodity that's in the, in the background,
It's an
and
enablement.
how do we utilize that? How do we utilize yeah, enable that to get us that connection? Are we gonna go see more live music? Are we gonna go,
Right.
like, hang out more? Like, are we gonna convert the mall into, like, a hangout space or a bounce on trampoline space or just sit and have a beer together space?
Yeah,
Like,
and am I
what's
gonna
gonna
stop
yeah,
am I gonna stop trying to pander to, um, the technology companies' algos to build a business that connects people? Because I don't need to pander the way I did. Like, fortunately, there's positive order impacts too. Like, Instagram made everybody create better murals on their wall because they wanted a place for you
yeah,
to Photoshop in front of it. But now that's kind of overkill. It's
yeah,
like I had the most experience. I'll finish with this, and then I'll give
yeah.
you the final thought. I can't believe I'm saying this because it's a total plug. It's a total plug, but
Do
it was
it,
a
do
real
it.
experience. Right, I was coming through Magic Mountain this weekend, so I was going by your county, and, we stopped somewhere in there. We got young kids and a teenager with us. We
Yeah.
stopped at a Chili's, of all places. I haven't been in a Chili's, I think, in 20 something years, and I
Same.
jokingly, right, we're
I
walking
told
in.
my kids about Chili's the other day because my wife and I, when we first dated, we go there all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember why they were famous. I'm like, "How's this place still around?" Because I think of them as like I think of all the other ones, like Olive Garden, whatever. I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever." Like, not good food, not whatever, just kinda medium of the road. So I'm, like, laughing as we're walking in because I'm like, "I can't believe we're going to Chili's." Like, I don't think I've been in here in 20 something years, and I'm, like, doing the Will Ferrell thing, like, "Baby back, baby back, baby back."
yeah.
I'm like my kid's looking at me like I'm nuts, right? My teenager. No joke. 6 people, full. I mean, I like,
Yeah.
we didn't order everything, but we ordered, like,
You
more
ate
than we
like
needed.
champions.
Full.
That's
We
the way
ate
I
like
talk
champions.
about it in my house.
We shared one, and then we had 2, whatever they were, like
Yeah,
margarita, whatever they were,
yeah.
massive, these things, right? And they were tasty. Food was actually tasty, and I'm like a Michelin star, like, snob, like, when it comes to food.
I'm
It was
funny.
actually tasty.
I'm both ends of the spectrum, but go, 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 go.
Yeah, I'm not too good for it. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
I want good food for my money, right? I
yeah,
can't tell you the last time I talked about a restaurant, even ones I like, where I felt like I got a value. No joke. 6 people, I tipped the guy the server was tremendous. Best server I've had
yeah,
in years. I mean, like, attentive, not over the top, gave a crap, knew the menu, was like, "Here's this," before the kids spilled something, had something
yeah,
to clean up, like, I couldn't believe this server, it was amazing, and I was like, "Man, I remember serving people, like, when I worked table." I was like, "Wow." Tipped him 30%. Out the door, the bill was, 107 bucks for
what?
6 people in
Wow,
Ventura County
bro. Yeah, I
eating.
know, and anywhere in Southern I mean, anywhere in the world nowadays even,
I
but,
was
like,
like,
at a
can't even fill
chain,
my
a thing yeah.
gas. I can't even fill up my tank of gas to get here
And
for
you
that.
yeah, and you mentioned the word margarita, like, even just getting Cokes, like, I don't drink, 99% of the time when I go
Can't
out
buy
because
a
my wife
Coke.
doesn't drink very often, I don't do it myself, so, like but you just get Cokes that are, like, $8 a piece, and
Yeah, I
I
I
got 2
literally
kids,
looked at the
and
guy, I was
y
like, "I don't think
yeah,
this is right," and he goes, "No, it's right," and I said, "It can't be right, like, did you get that
yeah,
meal? Did you get." And then I'm like, "Why am I negotiating against myself?"
yeah,
I'm like, right? Like, if you got it wrong, it's not on me." I literally was like, "This is gonna come back," because I love Chili's now, and I go, "Wow, a corporate brand actually did something human. They created value, they created an experience, they have employees
yeah,
they must take care of because this place
yeah,
had wonderful employees." So I'm like, there's still people out there doing it right at the corporate level, very few,
yeah,
but at a local level, a small business needs to do that, and they can
yeah,
do that, and it doesn't take technology, and it's not about the price, it was the fact that the whole thing all in, then when the price came, it was like the cherry on top, and what I said was, I'm like, "This right here, this is what will take off.
yeah,
This is investable. This kind of thing is going to become the demand
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
and
scarce."
yeah,
Anyway,
that's it. I think we're gonna be doing that more, for sure, because I think we're gonna all crave, like,
oh,
either
without
that or be, be depressed and whatever. I had a similar
yeah,
not a similar thing. I always joke about those places 'cause Olive Garden is maybe the worst offender of them all. I got an Olive Garden gift certificate for some reason from something, and I couldn't convince anyone to go with me to Olive Garden. I finally convinced my friend Gary, shout out to Gary 805 Startups to go with me to Olive Garden, and we went to Olive Garden together. This was like, I don't know, must be 5, 6, 7 years ago at this point. We went and we tried something, and both of us were like, "This ain't good." We tried to, like, order, like, some other appetizer, it wasn't good, and then we were like, "Let's get out of here," and I'm, like, trying to do the math, and I'm like, "No." we have to use this gift certificate because I'm not coming back. And so we ordered a couple beers or something, and then we used it and then gave all the rest of it as a tip or whatever. And we left. And then Christmas time came around, not too long after, and we're driving by the mall or something with the whole family. And I remember driving by the Olive Garden's like separate, but in the parking lot of the Oaks Mall. And we're driving by, and they had a sign out front. And this was like when the parking lot's packed Christmas time. There's nowhere to park, and valet parking, if you want. There's a sign in front of the Olive Garden, like one of those stand-up signs that on the chalkboard it said like no wait time or something like that. I remember taking a picture of it and going, shocker, like, because it was just so bad. It was like, I remember as a teenager, Olive Garden was a place you'd go to. You'd order the soup because it was like one of the cheaper things.
Oh yeah,
And if you order the soup, it had the unlimited breadsticks. So you and all your dude friends could just eat like, again, you're like 16, 17 years old. You talk about eating like a champion. You're just endless eating, right? You go with like 10 dudes and you just eat like crazy for like $5 a piece or whatever it was. I was like, oh man, I can't wait to eat those breadsticks again. Those super salty breadsticks. They were disgusting, right? Like, at least you go to McDonald's, and at least, the French fries are McDonald's French fries. Like, as much as it's disgusting, it's also good because you grew up with it, like it's some chicken nuggets or something, right? Like, as much as it's horrible, it's amazing because you dip it in that barbecue sauce, you eat those French fries, you get a McDonald's Sprite or whatever, and it's like childhood again, an egg McMuffin. But it was so bad.
Well, and I think you're getting
Anyway.
is agentic AIs will get better memory. They get it better every day, but they don't have taste buds yet. They don't have those things that you and I just talked about. So I think the takeaway home from here is an early stage guy who's investing in all the future rails of the current and next economy. Still thinks the future is more human than not, and is hoping for that. Just like I am.
Well,
I appreciate. I appreciate having on. Make sure you subscribe to him. I'll give you the final word. I do want to respect everybody's time. Thanks. It's been a 2-hour deep dive on the atomic level. I want to thank Pebble. You hire people, or if you're one of Alon's startups and you need to hire people remotely and you want to have, that, I use them personally for all of our venture studio stuff. It's highpebble.ai. They're an employer of record. They allow you to talent wherever they are. And, you're not familiar with them? You should check them out.
You got to check them out. I'm writing it down right now.
My life, because especially when you have nexuses and you don't want to have California employees, but you want to hire people there, the EOR model
that's a huge problem. Yeah, it's a huge problem for all of our companies too.
Paying people and developers in local currency and having it not take up your whole day, like all that kind of stuff is when I switch over to them, because it's one line item. It comes out as payroll every week, and then if they're in Brazilian or if they're in, if they're wherever they are, they get paid in their real time, no transfer wise, none of all the crap. So anyway, an employer of record is a great way to go. Check out highpebble.ai, HIPEBL.ai. Tell them we sent you. They're doing like a 25% off thing right now. So that means you're paying less than I will pay. It's like $3.99 a month per employee, but it's all in, and benefits. They're great. So I use them. It's a subscriber of ours. It's my brand partner of the month. But anyway, Alon, it was awesome having you. Keep up the good work. Let me know how I can support. And Gary, if he's at 805 startups, I'm in the 805. So give me a shout.
Wait, you're in the 805?
I am in the 805. We'll connect offline. Yeah. We
don't want to get delved into those people. Okay, we're gonna hang. We're gonna hang in real life. I don't need the last word. You said it best, and I guess I'll give the plug of what I tell investors, what I tell entrepreneurs, what I tell other funds is when you meet someone who's brilliant, who's starting an idea, it's never too early to send them our direction. So go to dgb.vc or just email me directly, Alon, ALON at dgb.vc. But make sure you subscribe to Atomic. This was super fun. We got to do it again. And then,
let's do it in person.
The more often we do it, the less crazy distractions we'll get. And we'll get into the news and stuff like that we were planning on getting on that we didn't really talk about much. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Evan Gias down in Oz. I see some good friends there, and I give them a shout out. Ryan, thanks for the comment there. Thanks for tuning in for the full 2 hours, guys. We'll do on this replay. Share it amongst your friends. Make sure we give Alon a good Substack read coming. He's going to be coming back into the platform, so let's all subscribe to him and And look for the replay, guys. Share it with some folks. I think we got into a lot of stuff we didn't expect to, and it was very human, which is the point of this show. So thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Peace.